Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. Hope you're doing well today. So, last video, which was part 3, we left off in chapter 5, about 59 minutes in, and we'll be picking up somewhere around the case 28 mark. I'm going to play a little bit before, probably like the first 30 seconds of the last video, just to loop it on in there. And so without further ado, let us get rolling and we'll jump right into this today and get through as much as we can. There will be a 5-minute break, possibly 2 of them, depending on how far we go. So just want to make everyone aware of that. Everyone needs to stretch, refill their water, etc. So I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm glad we can share this time together to further our knowledge of the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap. So let's go.
Human extravagance has no bounds when it comes to instilling fear. A prime example is the fear of terrible punishment for those who commit suicide. It is true that being kept out of heaven has been a deterrent to suicide, but it is the wrong approach. I have noticed in recent years that even the Catholic Church is not quite so adamant about suicide being a mortal sin, subject to the extremes of spiritual punishment. There is now a Vatican-approved catechism which states that suicide is against natural law, but adds, by ways known to God alone, there is opportunity for salutary repentance. Salutary means conducive to some good purpose. My next case represents a subject who killed herself in her last life. She describes her examination of this act in a library setting. Repentance in the spirit world often begins here. Since I will...
Sorry, I'm just going to do a quick audio check to make sure my levels are okay going forward for the rest of the show. Continue on. I'm just doing this to check. Oops. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I was muted for about 15 seconds there.
There is now a Vatican-approved catechism which states that suicide is against natural law, but adds, by ways known to God alone, there is opportunity for salutary repentance. Salutary means conducive to some good purpose. My next case represents a subject who killed herself in her last life. She describes her examination of this act in a library setting. Repentance in the spirit world often begins here. Since I will be reviewing her suicide, this is a suitable point to briefly digress from the library and address some of the questions I have been asked about suicide and subsequent retribution in the spirit world. When I work with clients who have committed suicide in former lives, the first thing most exclaim right after the moment of death is, "Oh my God, how could I have been so stupid?" These are physically healthy people, not those who are suffering from a debilitating physical illness. Suicide by a person, young or old, whose physical state has reduced the quality of their life to almost nothing, is treated differently in the spirit world than those who had healthy bodies. While suicide cases are treated with kindness and understanding, people who kill themselves with a healthy body do have a reckoning. In my experience, souls feel no sense of failure or guilt when they have been involved with a mercy death. I shall give a realistic example of this sort of death with a brother and sister under the free will section in Chapter 9. When there is unendurable physical suffering, we have the right to be released from the pain and indignity of being treated like helpless children connected to life support systems. In the spirit world, I find that no stigma is attached to a soul leaving a terribly broken body who is released by its own hand or from that of a compassionate caregiver. I have worked with quite a number of people who have attempted suicide in the years before they saw me, and I feel my working with them has provided a helpful perspective. Some were still in emotional turmoil when I met them, while others had pulled away from thoughts of self-destruction. One thing I have learned is that people who tell me they don't belong on Earth need to be taken seriously. They may even be potential suicide cases. In my practice, these clients fall into one of three spiritual classifications. 1. Young, highly sensitive souls who began their incarnations on Earth but have spent little time here. Certain souls in this category have had great difficulty adjusting to the human body. They feel their very existence to be threatened because it is so cruel.
Yeah, no shit. I think that applies for everyone here, right? I mean, it's a given.
2. Both young and older souls who incarnated on another planet before coming to Earth. If these souls lived on worlds less harsh than Earth, they may be overcome by the primitive emotions and high density of the human body. These are the hybrid souls I discussed in the last chapter. Essentially, they feel they are in an alien body.
We all are. This is not our natural state. Being in a human body is not our true essence. It's not who we are. And so obviously, if you're going into something foreign, like a human body, in order to have an experience like we have here on Earth, it's not going to feel right. It's going to feel off. You might not be able to put your finger on it exactly, but something is off.
3. Souls below level 3 who have been incarnating on Earth since their creation, but are not merging well with their current body. These souls accepted a life contract with a host body whose physical ego mind is radically different from their immortal soul. They cannot seem to find themselves in this particular lifetime.
Again, I will say that this applies blanket across the realm we live in. It's not a normal state, so you're obviously losing yourself along the way here. Hold on. Is there a volume issue? Shit.
They cannot seem to find themselves in this particular lifetime.
Again, I will say that this Thank you for the heads up, Night Sky. Anyone watching the replay and live at the moment, just give me a second here.
What happens to souls involved?
Okay, that's too loud. Test. 1, 2, 3.
Involved with suicide in healthy bodies? These souls tell me they feel somewhat diminished in the eyes of their guides and group peers because they broke their covenant in a former life. There is a loss of pride from a wasted opportunity. Life is a gift, and a great deal of thought has gone into allocating certain bodies for our use. We are the custodians of this body, and that carries a sacred trust. My clients call it a contract. Particularly when a young, healthy person commits suicide, our teachers consider this an act of gross immaturity and the abrogation of responsibility. Our spiritual masters have placed their trust in our courage to finish life with functional bodies in a normal fashion, no matter how difficult. They have infinite patience with us, but with repeated suicide offenders, their forgiveness takes on another tone. I worked with a young client who had tried to commit suicide a year before I saw him. During our hypnosis session, we found evidence of a pattern of self-destruction in former lives. Facing his master teachers at a council meeting following his last life, this client was told by an elder, "Once again you are here early and we are disappointed. Have you not learned the same test grows more difficult with each new life you terminate?"
But that's because of the whole karma aspect of things and the guilt trip. That's why it gets more difficult, because they're guilt tripped when they cross over. Regardless of whether you commit suicide or die a natural death, that's what happens.
Your behavior is selfish for many reasons, not the least of which is the sorrow you cause to those left behind who loved you. How much longer will you continue to just throw away the perfectly good bodies we give you? Tell us when you are ready to stop engaging in self-pity and underestimating your capabilities. I don't think I have ever heard of a council member come down any harder on one of my subjects over the issue of suicide. Months later, this client wrote to me to say that whenever thoughts of committing suicide entered his head, he pushed them aside because of a desire to avoid having to face this elder again after killing himself. A little post-hypnotic suggestion on my part made recovering this scene in his conscious mind especially easy, and serves as a deterrent. In suicide cases involving healthy bodies,
I just want to say that this is a memory that makes complete sense that it is capable of being obtained. For what we know about how the system works, it's going to want you to discover this memory if you're going to go through the effort of trying to obtain it. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be something like this in specifically, but I look at it more as a Matrix allowed memory, because this is a memory linked to guilt, linked to karma, linked to judgment, and excuse me, in turn you go along for the ride. So having access to that memory makes perfect sense.
one of two things generally happens to these souls. If they are not a repeat offender, the soul is frequently sent back to a new life rather quickly, at their own request, to make up for lost time. This could be within 5 years of their death on Earth. The average soul is convinced it is important to get right back on the diving board after having taken a belly flop in a prior life. After all, we have natural survival instincts as human beings, and most spirits tenaciously fight to stay alive. For those who display a pattern of bailing out when things get rough, there are places of repentance for a good purpose. These places do not contain a pantheon of horrors. In some
Places of repentance. Again, it's the guilt trip, the never-ending guilt trip. God forbid someone has had enough and does whatever they do, or die a natural death. The result's the same. You're going to be guilt tripped as if you didn't do it right the previous incarnation, and so it happens over and over again.
dark lower spirit region reserved for sinners. Rather than being punished in some sort of bleak purgatory, these souls may volunteer to go to a beautiful planetary world with water, trees, and mountains, but no other life. They have no contact with other souls in these places of seclusion, except for sporadic visits by a guide to assist them in their reflections and self-evaluation. Places of isolation come in many varieties, and I must admit they seem terribly boring. Maybe that's the whole idea. While you are sitting out the next few games on the bench, your teammates continue with challenges in their new lives. Apparently, this medicine seems to work, because these souls come back to their groups feeling refreshed, but knowing they have missed out on a lot of action and opportunities for personal development with their friends.
Again, the guilt trip, personal development with their friends, yada, yada, yada. And then, they're refreshed and re-indoctrinated, so to say. And then they end up going back to their group, and their group's like, you could have done a little better job that time. Something along those lines. And so the cycle continues, and you just end up reincarnated back here again with your life script, your new life script, your new body, new career, new location, etc.
Nonetheless, there are souls who will never adjust to Earth. I hear some are reassigned to other worlds for their future incarnations.
And see, this other worlds means they've got different scams going on in other realms that, okay, they realize that they're fighting a losing battle with this one particular spirit soul, and so they have adjacent realities set up, so you will essentially still be under their thumb. And that's how this all works. It's we don't have obvious proof of other physical realities, but we'd really be silly not it would be silly not to think that those things happen. We know there's multiple astral realms out there that are linked to this control system, so why wouldn't there be other physical material worlds that may be a little easier but still essentially achieving the same goal, and a new scenery? People get used to incarnating here and seeing this scenery, so they, just like we talked about before with the stage play, they roll down the curtains, change the scenery, and roll it up, but it's still under the thumb of the same control system until you figure it out and reclaim your true essence.
My next two cases represent the exposure of souls to spiritual libraries and the impact seeing their records has on them. In both cases, there is evidence of the use of altered reality, with some differences. The woman in case 29, a suicide case, will be shown a series of alternative choices she could have made in her past life, presented in 4 coexisting time sequences. The first timeline was the actual life itself. She will be more of an observer than a participant in these scenes. With case 30, however, we will see the employment of a single scene with an altered reality, where the soul will dramatically enter a scene from his past life to actually experience a different outcome. Both cases are designed to show the many paths in life involving choices. Our guides decide on the most effective means for self-discovery in the library. The design and scope of these investigations then comes under the jurisdiction of the archivists.
Okay, so you have guides, you have archivists, and they have jurisdiction. You heard that word, right? Jurisdiction. It's right in our face, right there to be seen and heard, that it's There's a hierarchy going on with all of this, and it's all designed to keep you here. Let's just rewind that briefly.
Both cases are designed to show the many paths in life involving choices. Our guides decide on the most effective means for self-discovery in the library. The design and scope of these investigations then comes under the jurisdiction of the archivists. Case 29. Amy had recently returned to the spirit world from a small farming village in England, where she killed herself in 1860 at age 16. This soul would wait another 100 years before coming back due to her self-doubts about handling adversity. Amy drowned herself in a local pond because she was 2 months pregnant and unmarried. Her lover, Thomas, had been killed the week before in a fall off a thatched roof he was repairing. I learned the two were deeply in love and intended to marry. Amy told me during her past life review that she thought when Thomas was killed, her life was over. Amy said she did not want to bring disgrace upon her family from the gossip of local villagers. Tearfully, this client said, "I knew they would call me a whore, and if I ran off to London, this is exactly what a poor girl with child would become." In suicide cases, the soul's guide might offer seclusion, aggressive energy regeneration, a quick return, or some combination of these things. When Amy crossed over after killing herself, her guide, Likiko, and the soul of Thomas were there to comfort her for a while. Soon she was alone with Likiko in a beautiful garden setting.
Again, here we see the garden setting, the regeneration, got a couple people teaming up on her.
Amy sensed the disappointment in Likiko's manner, and she expected to be scolded for her lack of courage. Angrily, she asked her guide why the life didn't go as planned in the beginning.
Exactly.
She had not seen the possibility of suicide before her incarnation.
Why didn't the life go as planned? Because when you get here, things are different. They're not going to play out the same way as planned. Excuse me, I apologize. So you get here, and what happens? You're under the veil of forgetfulness. You have pretty much no guidebook on what to do. Yet all these plans, all these things are being panned out before you get here. It's all a scam.
Amy thought she was supposed to marry Thomas, have children, and live happily in her village to old age. Someone, she felt, had pulled the rug out from under her.
Her words. She felt someone pulled the rug out from under her. Those are her words.
Likiko explained that Thomas's death was one of the alternatives in this life cycle, and that she had the freedom to make better choices than killing herself. Amy learned that for Thomas, his choice to go up on a high, steep, and dangerously slippery roof was a probable one. More probable because his soul mind had already considered this accident as a test for her. Later I was to learn Thomas came very close to not accepting the roof job because of internal forces pulling him the other way. Apparently, everyone in this soul group saw that Amy's capacity for survival was greater than she gave herself credit for, although she had shown tenuous behavior in her earlier lives. Once on the other side, Amy thought the whole exercise was cruel and unnecessary. Likiko reminded Amy,
"You hearing this? I mean, this is a great example of someone who knows within themselves, yes, it's cruel, it's not right, but yet it's going on, and yet she's being teamed up by these assholes, these thugs. These are thugs, all right? Astral thugs who come in and try and explain away everything. Just like what happens here on Earth. Remember, Earth has the biggest case of Stockholm Syndrome on steroids you will ever witness, and everyone around you chirps in your ear, explaining away the injustices, the atrocities, all the negative shit that comes with coming down here. And anyone new, just hang in there. Everything's cool. We're going to get through this. And I'm always available to speak with someone if they have any questions, feel free to email me, foreverconsciousresearch@gmail.com. If you're new to the concept, I highly recommend just sticking with it. This is the most important truth you can ever learn, and that's the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap.
That she had a history of self-flagellation, and that if she was ever going to help others with their survival, she must get past this failing in herself. When Amy responded that she had little choice but to kill herself, given the circumstances of Victorian England, she found herself in the following library scene. Dr. N. Where are you now? Subject, somewhat disoriented. I'm in a place of study. It looks Gothic. Stone walls, long marble tables. Dr. N.
Amazing how the scenery looks like it, like down here, right? It streamlines the conditioning. When you're down here, you see similar. When you're up there, you see similar. Gets it kind of embedded in your head what's going on, and that there's multiple realities linked to this reality, and all work in unison.
Why do you think you are in this sort of building? Subject, pause. In one of my lives, I lived as a monk in Europe, in the 12th century. I loved the old church cloister as a place for quiet study. But I know where I am now. It is the library of great books, the records. Dr. N. Many people call them life books. Is this the same thing? Subject. Yes, we all use them. Pause. Subject is distracted. There is a worrisome-looking old man in a white robe coming toward me, fluttering around me. Dr. N. What's he doing, Amy? Subject. Well, he's carrying a set of scrolls, rolls of charts. He is muttering and shaking his head at me. Dr. N. Do you have any idea why? Subject. He is the librarian. He says to me, "You are here early." Dr. N. What do you think he means? Subject. Pause. That I did not have compelling reasons for arriving back here early. Dr. N. Compelling reasons. Subject. Breaking in. Oh, being in terrible pain, not able to function in life. Dr. N. I see. Tell me what this librarian does next. Subject. There is a huge open space where I see many souls at long desks with books everywhere, but I'm not going to that room now. The old man takes me to one of the small private rooms off to the side where we can talk without disturbing the others. Dr. N. How do you feel about this? Subject. Shakes head in resignation. I guess I need special treatment right now. The room is very plain with a single table and chair. The old man brings in a large book, and it is set up in front of me like a TV viewing screen. Dr. N. What are you supposed to do? Subject, abruptly. Pay attention to him. He sets his scroll in front of me first and opens it. Then he points to a series of lines representing my life. Dr. N. Please go slowly here and explain what these lines mean to you, Amy. Subject. They are lifelines. My lines. The thick, widely spaced lines represent the prominent experiences in our life and the age they will most likely occur. The thinner ones bisect the main lines and represent a variety of other circumstances. Dr. N. I have heard these less prominent lines are possibilities of action, as opposed to the probabilities. Is that what you are saying? Subject. Pause. That's right. Dr. N. What else can you tell me about the thick versus thin lines? Subject. Well, the thick line is like the trunk of a tree, and the smaller ones are the branches. I know the thick one was my main path. The old man is pointing at that line and scolding me a bit about taking a dead-end branch. Dr. N. You know, Amy, despite this archivist fussing about these lines, they do represent a series of your choices. From a karmic standpoint, all of us have taken a wrong fork in the road from time to time.
From a karmic standpoint. Yeah, I mean, you come down here, there's no way that you're not going to. The point is with all of this is you are never, ever going to please this system. It is impossible. The standard, you cannot come here in a physical body and not screw up in some form. And no matter what it is, how big, how small, how righteous you tried to live, how morally and ethically you tried to live, you will never, ever please this system. And that's by design.
Subject, heatedly. Yes, but this is serious. I did not just make a small mistake in his eyes. I know he cares about what I do. There is a pause, and then loudly, I want to hit him over the head.
Remember, it's a mistake in his eyes. A mistake in his eye. The judgment coordinator.
I know he cares about what I do. There is a pause, and then loudly, I want to hit him over the head with his damn scroll.
I don't blame
I tell
you.
him, you go try my life for a while.
Yeah.
Note, at this point, Amy tells me that the old man's face softens, and he leaves the room for a few minutes.
It's kind of a little mind manipulation here, so to say. You know, softens the face, so you're not as apt to probably get as angry or upset. Leaves the room so things can calm down. Resembles kind of like how things might be handled down here too, right?
She thinks he is giving her time to collect herself, but then he brings back another book. This book is open to a page where Amy can see the archivist as a young man being torn apart by lions in an ancient Roman arena for his religious convictions. He then puts this book aside and opens Amy's book.
Sounds like a great experience. Great life.
I ask her what she sees next. Subject. It comes alive in three-dimensional color. He shows me the first page with a universe of millions of galaxies, then the Milky Way, and our solar system, so I will remember where I came from. As if I could forget. Then more pages are turned. Dr. N. I like this perspective, Amy. Then what do you see? Subject. Ah, crystal prisms. Dark and light depending upon what thoughts are sent. Now I remember I have done this before. More lines and pictures which I can move forward and backward in time with my mind. But the old man is helping me anyway. Note, I have been told these lines form vibrational sequences representing timeline alignments. Dr. N, how would you interpret the meaning of the lines? Subject, they form the patterns for the life pictures in the order you wish to look at, that you need to look at.
You need
Dr.
to.
N, I don't want to get ahead of you, Amy. Just tell me what the old man does with you now. Subject, okay.
Manipulate.
He flips to a page, and I see myself on screen in the village I just left. It isn't really a picture. It's so real. It's alive. I'm there. Dr. N.
I firmly believe that, it feels real. What they're saying is they're connecting with it on a deep level as if it's real as real can be. What are they doing here? It really seems that even though we know everything is recorded in some way, we can call it the Akashic Records or the ether. I prefer the ether. Even though all this stuff is recorded, it really seems to be a more or less projection of the person. It's like an extracted projection placed back on them. Now, can I say that for certain? No, but near-death experiences seem to point towards, obviously, we know that the belief system dictates the type of near-death experience one will likely have. In the same breath, where in this scenario, where a moment is being projected and shown, and they're feeling it as if it's more real than real. So hopefully I'm getting that point across correctly.
Are you actually in the scene, or are you simply observing the scene? Subject: we can do both, but right now I am supposed to just watch the scenes. Dr. N: that's fine, Amy. Let's go through the scene as the old man is presenting it to you. Explain what is going on. Subject: oh, we are going to look at other choices. After seeing what I actually did at the pond where I took my life, the next scene has me back at the pond on the bank. Pause. This time I don't wade in and drown myself. I walk back to the village. Laughs for the first time. I'm still pregnant. Dr. N, laughing with her. Okay, turn the page. Now what? Subject: I'm with my mother, Iris. I tell her I am carrying Thomas's baby.
Tugging at the heartstrings. What else is new?
She is not as shocked as I thought she would be. She is angry, though. I get a lecture. Then she is crying with me and holding me. Subject now breaks down while tearfully continuing to talk. I tell her I am a good girl, but I was in love. Dr. N, does Iris tell your father? Subject: that is one alternative on the screen. Dr. N, follow that alternative path for me. Subject: pause. We all move to another village, and everyone there is told I am a widow. Years later, I will marry an older man. These are very hard times. My father lost a lot when we moved, and we were even poorer than before. But we stay together as a family, and life eventually becomes good. Crying again. My little girl was beautiful. Dr. N, is that the only alternative course of action you study right now? Subject, with resignation. Oh, no. Now I look at another choice. I come back from the pond and admit I am pregnant. My parents scream at me and then fight with each other about who is to blame. I am told they do not want to give up our small farm they worked so hard for and leave the village because I am disgraced. They give me a little money to get to London so I can try to find work as a serving girl.
Poor thing. It sounds awful. And we've seen examples of this in the past. And we know it happens down here where children are, there's a lot of times parents can't afford, especially in other countries, in the East, a lot. It's really sad, but parents can't afford to take care of their children, so sometimes they'll sell their kids or send them off somewhere in order for them to work and send money back home to the family, and they're just children. And this has been going on for a long, long time. It's nothing new. But when you hear things like that, it's really bothersome. In this case, we see a shaming because of the pregnancy.
Dr. N, and how does this work out? Subject, bitterly. Just what I expected. London would not have been good. I wind up in the streets sleeping with other men. Shudders. I die kind of young, and the baby is a foundling who eventually dies too.
So we've learned about foundlings through various research related to Tartaria mud flood and the whole reset hypotheses, which is obviously true. But even without all that, foundlings was a big, big issue. And when a woman has a baby, and again, the family can't support it, they're encouraged to give it up. Sometimes they'll get money with it. And in this case, the poor child died.
Horrible. Dr. N. Well, at least you tried to survive in that alternative life. Are any other choices shown to you? Subject. I'm growing tired. The old man shows me one last choice. There are others, I think, but he will stop here because I ask him to. In this scene, my parents still believe I should go away from them, but we wait until a traveling peddler comes to our village. He agrees to take me in his cart after my father pays him something. We do not go to London, but rather to other villages in the district. I finally find work with a family. I tell them my husband was killed. The peddler gave me a brass ring to wear and backs up my story. I'm not sure they believe me. It doesn't matter. I settle in the town. I never marry, but my child grows up healthy. Dr. N. After you are finished turning these pages with the old man and have contemplated some of the alternatives to suicide, what are your conclusions? Subject, sadly. It was a waste to kill myself. I know it now. I think I knew it all along. Right after I died, I said to myself, God, that was a stupid thing to do. Now I'm going to have to do it all over again. When I went before my council, they asked if I would like to be retested soon. I said, let me think about it a while.
Would you like to be retested soon?
After this session, my client discussed some of the choices she has had to make in her current life involving courage. As a teenager, she became pregnant and dealt with this difficulty through the help of a school counselor, and finally her mother, who was Iris in her life as Amy. They encouraged her to stand up for herself regardless of the opinions of others. In our session together, my subject learned her soul has a tendency to prejudge serious events in her life in a negative manner. In many past lives, there was always a nagging thought that whatever decision she made in a crisis would be the wrong one. Although Amy was reluctant to return to Earth again, today she is a woman of much greater confidence. She spent the 100 years between lives reflecting on her suicide and decisions made in the centuries before this life. Amy is a musical soul, and she said at one point, "Because I wasted the body assigned to me, I'm doing a kind of penance. During recreation, I can't
A penance. Doing a penance because I wasted my body.
go to the music room, which I love to do, because I need to be alone in the library. I use the screens to review my past actions involving choices where I have hurt myself and those around me. When a client uses the word screen to describe how they view events, the setting is relevant. Small conference rooms and the library appear to have tables with a variety of TV-sized books. These so-called books have three-dimensional illuminated viewing screens. One client echoed the thoughts of most subjects when she said, "These records give the illusion of books with pages, but they are sheets of energy which vibrate and form live picture patterns of events."
So they're illusory books. Illusory books. I have trouble with that word. Sorry. And it almost makes you wonder. Again, is what's in the book a projection of the person being put out, or does it link into some sort of, we can equate it to like a quantum memory bank? Because again, they're saying, yeah, the book isn't real, but it gives off that feeling that it's real, and it's tapping into something. What it's tapping into, we don't know, but we know it isn't good, because it's a deceptive mechanism being placed onto the spirit soul experiencing it.
The size of these screens depends upon usage within a given setting. For instance, in the life selection rooms we use just before our next incarnation, the screens are much larger than seen in spiritual libraries and classrooms. Souls are given the option of entering these life-sized screens. The huge, shimmering screens usually encircle the soul, and they have been called the Ring of Destiny. I will discuss the ring further in Chapter 9. Despite the impressive size of the screens in future life selection rooms, souls spend far more time looking at scenes in the library. The function of the smaller library screens is for monitoring past and current time on Earth on a continuing basis. All screens, large or small, have been described to me as sheets of film which look like waterfalls that can be entered while part of our energy stays in the room. All cosmic viewing screens are multidimensional, with coordinates to record space-time avenues of occurrence. These are often referred to as timelines, and they can be manipulated by thought scanning. There may be other directors of this process not seen by the soul. Quite often, a subject will employ mechanical contrivances in their scanning descriptions, such as panels, levers, and dials. Apparently, these are all illusions created for souls who incarnate on Earth. Regardless of screen size, the length, width, and depth in each frame allows the soul to become part of a procession of cause and effect sequences.
Causes the soul to be part, a cause and effect sequence. Okay? So again, these energies are combining, and they don't know what these energies are doing to them, but they're not for the benefit of the person or the spirit or the soul experiencing it. It's for the benefit of the system to keep one here. That's where the line has to be drawn, and there has to be a clarification of that, because it's there for a reason, just like all these other systems of control that are linked to everything.
Can souls enter the smaller screens associated with books in the same way as with the larger screens found in the ring? While there are no restrictions for time travel study, most of my subjects appear to use the smaller screens more for observing past events in which they once participated. Souls take a portion of their energy, leaving the rest at the console, and enter the screens in one of two ways. 1. As observers moving as unseen ghosts through scenes on Earth with no influence on events. I see this as working with virtual reality.
Yep.
2. As participants, where they will assume roles in the action of the scene.
Before I continue, in near-death experiences, you hear all the time that it's like a virtual reality. Same thing with ayahuasca and DMT trips. They'll say it's like a virtual reality. Astral projection, it's like a virtual reality. No different. It's a very good term to attach to this, because that's pretty much what we're looking at. It's the best wordage we can use to explain it in our terms.
Through scenes on Earth with no influence on events. I see this as working with virtual reality. 2. As participants, where they will assume roles in the action of the scene, even to the extent of altering reality from the original by recreations. Once reviewed, everything returns to what it was, since the constant reality of a past event on a physical world remains the same from the perspective of the soul who took part in the original event. As the dialogue progresses in my next case, it will be obvious that an unseen entity is recreating a past life scene, but with alterations. These adjustments are intended to elicit empathy. And
wow, so we're talking about an edited rewind of a past memory from a previous life. Why is that? And Newton's excuse is that it's, it's supposed to help. Come on.
that an unseen entity is recreating a past life scene, but with alterations. These adjustments are intended to elicit empathy and teach the soul in case 30.
Unreal.
This case is an example of what some of my clients mean when they talk about entering worlds of altered time and causality through screens found in books, desk consoles, and viewing theaters. Although these space-time training exercises do not change the course of the original historical event on Earth, there may be other forces at work here.
Yeah, there may be other forces at work here that are completely unnecessary, but yet they exist, yet they're allowed to happen, and it's all about aiding and getting you back here and staying within the system. Don't figure out the scam. Just go along with the show and be grateful.
I concede the possibility that my subject's memories could demonstrate that they are moving through parallel universes, which might nearly duplicate our own space-time. Yet, in spiritual classrooms and libraries, they do not see past events on Earth as being outside the reality of our universe. I do have the feeling that what a soul from Earth is able to see and explain to me is regulated by the resonances of their personal guides. When they reach the life selection room, with larger theater-type screens to look solely at the future, their perspective about a constant reality changes more to a fluctuating reality. Events on any screen can be moved forward or backward. They can be placed into fast or slow motion, or suspended for study. All possibilities of occurrences involving the viewer are then available for study.
Available for study means that you basically go back into that moment and relive it. That's kind of what we see in the life review time and time again, where you will have a near-death experience, you go to the life review section, even though you're not dead yet, but you go through that process. It's like an automated process that appears for a good chunk of people, not everyone, but a good chunk. And they can relive a moment of negative or positive. And we also see that with deathbed visitation. Sometimes the life review starts to occur leading right up, the day of death, day before death. You start to see some testimony of that occurring then as well. So just want to throw that in there.
They were using a movie projector. One can sense from case 30 that a past event on our physical world has not been indelibly changed for this individual, even though his soul is existing in the eternal now-time of the spirit world. Some would call these projections no-time for souls, because the past can be blended with future possibilities in the next life from an always-present spirit time. Case 30. This case involves a soul called Unther, who has just completed a life of aggressive behavior toward other people. His mentors decided to begin Unther's life review in the library with a scene from his childhood in a play yard. Dr. N. When you return to the spirit world, Unther, is there some highlight of your past life review that you particularly remember and would like to tell me about? Subject. After I have time to visit with my group for a while, my guide, Photanius, escorts me to the library for some private study.
Photanius? Well, there's a name.
While my past life is still very fresh. Dr. N. Is this the only time you will come here?
Why would it be just... Why? Okay, the term fresh is interesting because they're in the astral. Why is this memory not... It seemed... Using the word fresh implies that you can't access the information of the past life thoroughly enough later on. Why is that? Because of the memory wipe. We come here, we're born under the veil of ignorance, and that process is initiated in the astral realm, where you forget things. So it's very interesting to hear it in those terms, because it suggests that those may only be available for certain lengths of time or fragmented, and of course that is all on purpose.
Subject. Oh, no. We often come here by ourselves to study. It is also a way to prepare for the next life, too. I will study vocations and avocations for the new life in light of my objectives, to see if they fit. Dr. N. All right, let's move into the library. Please describe everything you see in the order that you see it. Subject: The room is in a large rectangular building. Everything is glowing, transparent white. The walls are lined with big, thick books. Dr. N: Has Photanius brought you here? Subject: Just in the beginning. Now I am with a woman with pure white hair who has met me. Her face is very reassuring. The first thing I notice when I enter are the long rows of tables that stretch off so far into the distance I can't see where they end. I see many people sitting at the long tables looking at the books in front of them. The people studying are not too close to one another. Dr. N: Why is that? Subject: Oh, not facing each other is a matter of courtesy and respect for privacy. Dr. N: Please go on. Subject: My librarian looks so scholarly. We call these people the scholastics. To others, they are archivists. She moves to a nearby wall section and pulls down a book. I know these are my records. In a faraway voice, they contain stories which have been told and those that are untold. Dr. N: With some levity: Do you have your library card? Subject laughs. No cards are required, just mental attunement. Dr. N: Do you have more than one life book assigned to you? Subject: Yes, and this is the one I will use today. The books are stacked in order on the shelves. I know where mine are, and they glow when I look at them from a distance. Dr. N: Could you go into the stacks yourself? Subject: No, but I think the older ones do. Dr. N:
Not allowed. Not allowed. You can't go in yourself. You need permission. Interesting, huh? Why can't you? Why can't you? Why are you cut off? Because everything's a learning experience. Everything's a school. You got to go through the proper channels. Do you want to deal with this shit when you go up there? Seriously. Do you want to deal with this type of crap up there? You've already dealt with it enough down here. Do you really want to go through all this again, guys? We don't. And that's why learning this topic is so important, because our memories get wiped. You have to learn it now. While you're learning it in this lifetime, it can be applied afterwards on your deathbed in order to escape. That's the whole point of this. Because otherwise you go through the whole process again, you lose your memory, and you will have to figure this out again. Next lifetime, 100 lifetimes from now, 1,000 lifetimes from now. And I say to everybody listening who's still on the fence with all this, it can't hurt at all to look at this information, learn it for yourself, and apply it in order to save yourself. Because nothing else exterior to us is going to save us. It's all about us taking control of our sovereign right given to us by the Creator. That's the one thing we know that the Creator handed down to us. The ability to use our free will and sovereign abilities to reclaim and keep ourselves whole. We've lost ourselves. Now, I'm not telling you to worship the Creator. I don't do worship. Worship is really, really probably the worst thing you can do. Because worship implies that you're giving yourself away to something else. The Creator doesn't want to be worshipped. The Creator just creates and does its thing. Okay? It doesn't care. If you can, as long as you're consenting and going along with the ride, that was your right. That's what you're given. It doesn't have to be friendly. It doesn't have to be moral. It doesn't have to be ethically achieved. As long as the consent is given, that's the whole ball game.
Dr. N: Could you go into the stacks yourself? Subject: No, but I think the older ones do. Dr. N: So at this moment, the librarian has brought you the book you are supposed to study. Subject: Yes. There are large pedestals positioned near the tables. The scholastic opens the page where I am to begin. Note: We are now at the stage when each case takes on a unique quality of personal engagement with the lifebook screens. The conscious mind may or may not be able to translate into human language what the superconscious mind fully sees in the library. Dr. N. Then she is getting you started at the pedestal before you take this book to a table by yourself? Subject. Yes. I'm looking at a page with writing, gold lettering. Dr. N. Can you read this writing for me? Subject. No, I can't translate it now, but it identifies that it is my book. Dr. N. Can't you make out even one word? Look closely. Subject. Pause. I see the Greek pi symbol. Dr. N. Is this symbolic of a letter in the Greek alphabet, or does it have a mathematical significance for you? Subject. I think it has to do with ratios, how one thing relates to another to me. The writing is a language of motion and emotion. You feel the writing as musical vibrations. These symbols represent the causes and effects of a set of proportional relationships between similar and dissimilar circumstances in my lives. There is more, but I can't. Stops. Dr. N. Thank you for that. Now tell me, what are you going to do with this book? Subject. Before I carry it down to an empty space at one of the tables, we are going to do an exercise together. The writing symbols tell us where to turn the pages, but I can't tell you how. I don't know.
It tells them how to turn the pages. Again, it's a directive. You're supposed to just go along with it.
We are going to do an exercise together. The writing symbols tell us where to turn the pages, but I can't tell you how. I don't know how to explain it. Dr. N. Don't worry about that. You are doing a fine job with explanations. Just tell me how the librarian helps you. Subject takes a deep breath. We turn to a page which shows me as a child playing in my schoolyard. Subject now begins to shake. This isn't going to be fun. I'm directed to the time when I was a mean, rotten kid. I am supposed to experience this again.
Here we go. This is exactly like the life review and deathbed visitations and experiences. Again, where you're living. So, first off, we're talking about a child. Okay? A child. That alone should be a red flag right there. The fact that we're talking about a child who did something wrong in the eyes of this ridiculous system, and they are going to relive that moment through the eyes of the person they did dirty. Okay? And that's the same thing in near-death experiences. The same exact thing. It's no different. So we're here. Okay, let's go down memory lane and guilt trip the soul and spirit who was a child at the time in human form.
Something they want me to see, a part of my energy, crawls into the page itself. Dr. N, encouraging. All right. Let the scene unfold and tell me all you can. Subject, squirming in his chair. After I crawl into the book, I am totally engaged with the scene in every respect, as if it was being replayed all over again. I'm in grade school.
Exactly like near-death experiences.
It was being replayed all over again. I'm in grade school. I am a tough kid who picks on the smaller, less aggressive boys, punching them and throwing rocks at everybody when the schoolyard monitors aren't looking. And then, oh no! Dr. N, what's happening? Subject, alarmed. Oh, for God's sake! Now I am the smallest kid in the yard and I'm being punched by me. This is incredible. After a while, I am me again, being pelted by rocks from everyone else. Ow, this really hurts. Dr. N.
Yay, so you get to relive the experience and be guilt-tripped again. How wonderful. And you're experiencing it through the lens they want you to experience it, because it is a guilt trip.
After quieting the subject down and moving him totally back into the library, were you in the same time frame as you were as a child, or in a form of altered reality? Subject, pause. In the same time with altered reality. None of this happened in my early life, but it should have. So the time has been played back to me in a different way. We can relive an event to see if we can get it better. I felt the pain I inflicted upon others by my bullying. Dr. N.
Just before that continues, I just want to point out how the energy intermingled with the book. You saw that there was a participation being shown of the spirit or soul experiencing it at that time. So there was some sort of how do I put this? Like a required transition, maybe, for them to access this. Just a guess here, but it seems like that.
Unther, what have you learned from all this? Subject, long pause. That I was an angry kid driven by fear of my dad. Those are the scenes I am going to do next. I am working on compassion and learning to control my rebellious nature as a soul.
Oh, I swear to God. So there's obviously problems with the father, okay? And yet, these are the things that get me going, man. We're talking about children, okay? We're talking about, obviously, something abusive with the father, okay? We don't know everything yet, but the point is, there's a reason the child is acting out. And yet, the guilt trip comes along and it requires compassion. Fine, we can forgive and do all sorts of things, but we're talking about an insane manipulation tactic being utilized right in this moment that is glaringly obvious. And what does it do? It just leads to coming back here again. It leads to going through the whole process again. This system is nothing short of insane.
Dr. N., what is the significance of your life book and being in this whole library atmosphere? Subject, by studying my book, I am able to recognize mistakes and experience alternatives. Being in this quiet study area, watching all the other souls at the tables doing the same thing, well, it gives me a feeling of camaraderie with them and all we are going through together. Later in our session, we discovered that Unther needed self-discipline and to be more considerate of people. This had been a pattern of conduct.
You got to be more considerate and kind and loving, love and light, when we're talking about obviously an abusive situation that a child endured by their father. And we don't know exactly what happened. But yeah, compassion and empathy and all that, the script is flipped back on the person who was abused. You see this? It's insane. This is common logic that we need to apply in this situation and ask ourselves, why? Why? It's because of the bullshit karma system that exists out there. And people fall for it. Spirits, souls, whatever. I'm just going to say people. But you get my drift.
For many lives. When I asked if it was possible to study future lives in the library, I received this answer. Yes, we can scan a variety of possibilities here on the timelines, but future events are very indeterminate, and this is not the space where I would make any decisions about what is to come.
Well, the decisions that are to come are agreed upon. They're manipulated. They're suggested on where you should go. So there is an element of picking out your life script, your body, your location, your parents, etc. All that stuff comes into play, and it's suggested and egged on, basically, by the control system. So yeah, they can't really. I don't think they're going to put themselves out there too much, because there seems to also be a if, like we've seen with pre-birth memories, for instance, we've seen where someone will come down, pick a mother, pick a family, pick a life, etc., and then bow out and leave, basically resulting in an abortion. Okay, and then they'll come back down again, and maybe they'll go through it this time, or maybe they'll get themselves out of it again. But the point is they always end up coming back down here. But what comes along with that is an altered life script. So you theoretically, I don't think the system's really going to go too far out of its way to show something of the future when there's, again, it involves a consent factor. Even though when you're going through this, you have a veil up there, just like you have down here. Not as intense up there, but it's still there. And to what extent it is veiled, we really don't know. But we know there's some veiling going on where you do not have access to your true essence, your natural state. So the life script process is probably not something they want to tango with so much, as far as future predictions go, until they've got you under their claws and hooks, and more or less committed to a certain life script that is in the future.
When I hear statements such as this, I do think of parallel universes, where all possibilities and probabilities can be examined. In this scenario, the same event could occur from a slight to radically altered range on the same timeline in multiple spaces, and you would exist in many universes simultaneously. Yet the source of all space-time might well employ alternate realities without parallel universes. In later chapters, I will cite reports of multiple universes around us which are not duplicates of our universe. In the spirit world, souls watching the orchestrated screens seem to move from past to present to future and back simultaneously in the same space. When souls are in the library, I'm told certain event sequences of the future may look shadowy on some lines and almost disappear. On the other hand, in the classrooms with larger screens, and especially in the place of life selection, which has huge panel screens, the timelines are bolder.
So see, that's exactly what I was just talking about just a few minutes ago, where it's more clear what's going to happen once you reach the soul group indoctrination classes and the life selection process, okay? Because they have an idea at that point where you're likely headed. In the other scenario, I think it's a little too risky to put that out there, because there's multiple things that can occur, like we talked about with the abortions, etc. Or not the abortions, but the just what's the word I'm looking for? Miscarriages, etc. Things like that, where the life script is going to change, obviously. But once they kind of got you in that selection process and you've zoned in on something, then there's probably a good idea or a good synopsis of what's likely to occur.
It allows for easier scanning and entry by the soul for future life study. Newer souls must acquire these skills by learning to blend their light waves with the lines on the screens. By concentrating their essence in this way, images come into focus that pertain to them. The timelines on the screens move back and forth, crossing one another as resonating waves of probability and possibility from the now time of the spirit world, where past and future are joined, and all is knowable. Cases 29 and 30, as with all my cases, raise the question of what true reality is. Are classrooms and the library with viewing screens of past and future time real? Everything I know about our life after death is based upon the observations of people. The observer communicates to me in trance from their soul mind through the brain. It is the observer who defines the properties of matter and ethereal substances both on earth and in the spirit world. Consider the last case. Unther told me he cannot change his past by a second time around visitation. Yet after death, he returned to the playground of his childhood as an active participant. Once again, he was a boy, playing with other children, with all the sights, sounds, smells, and feelings connected to that event. Some of my clients say these are simulated events. But are they? Unther became part of the scene where he bullied children and then was attacked by them. He could feel the hurt and squirmed in my office chair from pain he had not received in the timeline of this boyhood. Who is to say an altered reality does not simultaneously exist for all events, where both origins and outcomes are interchangeable?
Okay, he's saying origins and outcomes are interchangeable. They have a record of all this stuff going on. It's recorded, it's saved. And that person was involved in that situation. It's capable of holding all of the information surrounding that given moment. So is it really that far-fetched to think that they can't just transfer the moment that of the person committing the act to the same moment of the person receiving the act?
The observer soul may work with many realities at a time in the spirit world while studying. All are placed in the soul's path to teach. We question whether our universe is all an illusion. If eternal thoughts of the soul are represented by intelligent light energy that is timeless and formless, it is not restricted by matter in our universe. Thus, if a cosmic consciousness controls what the observer mind sees on Earth, the whole concept of cause and effect within given time intervals is a manipulated illusion designed to train us. Even if we believe that everything we think is real is an illusion, life is anything but meaningless. We know if we hold a rock in our hand, it is as real to us as an observer participant in a physical world. We must also keep in mind that a divine intelligence placed us in this environment to look.
Wrong. A divine intelligence did not, by any means, place us in this situation. That is a lie. Complete lie. We agreed to it. We agreed to tango in this realm and everything that came along with it. And the only way to get out is to not play the game, not have the attachments, the love, the dog, the family, the close friends, the religious deities, the gurus, you name it, all this stuff. All of it is designed to make you cling to it, thinking that there needs to be further learning involved. There are so many traps involved with this place. It's not even funny, and they extend out into the astral realm in so many just unbelievable ways. The way the mechanisms play out are nothing short of amazing. I do tip my hat at how intricate all of this is, but yet how pathetic it all is and how easy it all is to escape. It's mind-numbing.
Learn and grow for a greater good. None of us are here by accident, and neither are those events which affect us in our own reality at this moment in time. Colors of spirits. The mixture of colors in soul groups. When people in trance mentally leave the spaces of energy rejuvenation, orientation, and the library to engage actively with other souls, their contrasting colors become more evident. One aspect of understanding the dynamics of cluster groups is the identification of each soul by color. In Journey of Souls, I described my findings about the energy colors of souls. What I want to do in this section is to try to correct some misconceptions people have regarding color recognition. I have charted the full spectrum range of core colors that identify the level of soul development as seen by subjects in deep hypnosis. More importantly, I have attempted to determine the subtle overlaps and mixes of energy colors within these levels. The basic core colors of white, yellow, and blue generated by souls are the major markers of their growing development. As their light waves take on deeper hues from light to dark during advancement, they become less scattered and have greater focus in their vibrational motion. The transition is slow, and there is much spilling over of color tints as souls develop. Because of this, it is restrictive to lay down hard, definitive rules about color transmission. We see the pure white tones reflected in beginner souls. It is a mark of innocence, and yet this color can be seen throughout the spectrum for all souls. The universal color of white will be explained further in the next case. White is often associated with the halo effect. Guides, for instance, may suddenly charge up their normally intense, steady light and surround themselves with a brilliant white halo. Souls returning to the spirit world often tell me that when they notice any soul coming toward them from a distance, they see white light. Souls whose core level of development are in the beginnings of levels 1, 3, and 6, as well as higher-level souls, are usually seen with no overlapping of other color tints in the center of their energy mass. I don't see many clients exclusively displaying green or brownish green, the colors of an advanced level 4. This may indicate we need more healers on Earth. I have never had a subject whose energy is totally in the violet-purple range. The color ranges beyond level 5 are ascended masters who do not appear to be incarnating, so the little I know about them comes only from my subjects' observations.
Just so we're all clear, ascended masters are bullshit. They're just controllers. They're part of the mechanisms of control.
There are individual variables within each soul cluster group in terms of their basic core color, because they are not all developing at the same rate. However, a soul's energy color may also be affected by another factor, which initially confused me. Besides the primary core colors indicating the stage of overall development, certain souls carry secondary colors. These have been called halo colors because they usually appear to the observer to be outside the core center of a soul's energy mass. Halo colors are undiluted by tints or shades of other colors, as can be the case with central core colors. The only exception here would be if the halo and core color were exactly the same. Reports from my subjects in distinguishing colors are made easier because this overlaying effect is not often seen. The halo colors represent attitudes, beliefs, and even unattained aspirations of the soul. Because they are learned in each life, the halo tints may fluctuate more quickly between lives than the core colors, which display a slower development of character. During a hypnosis session, these secondary halo colors are like flashing self-portraits the moment the observer sees them. Case 31, a highly advanced level 5, will describe this effect. This individual was among a group of clients who helped me decipher the color coding of halos. Case 31. Dr. N. If I were standing in front of you in the spirit world, holding up a full-length mirror, what colors would we see? Subject: You would see a light blue center with goldish white at the edges of my energy, my halo. Dr. N: And when you look at your master teacher, what does his energy look like? Subject: Clandor has a dark blue center, working outward to a pale violet, crowned with an edge halo of white. Dr. N: What do core energy and halo energy mean to you? Subject: Clandor radiates the solid state of his learning experience at the center of his energy, while the violet trim is his advancing wisdom from that knowledge. The white transmits that wisdom. Dr. N: Eventually, what do you think Clandor's core center will be, and how will it appear? Subject: The deep violet of divine spirituality radiating from all positions in his energy mass. Dr. N: Can you define the difference between core and halo color variations in soul energy? Subject: The central core represents accomplishment. Dr. N: Such as the light blue in your own energy. This would be your present learning attainment. Subject: Yes. Dr. N: And the edges, the halos, your own goldish white, what can you say about that? Subject: Pause. Ah, my attributes. Well, I have always tried to watch out for other people in my lives. This is who I am. But it is also what I wish to become. Rather, I should say, I want to strive to grow stronger in this aspect. Dr. N: You are not a beginner soul, and yet you display some white in your energy. I'm curious about this bright white halo ring around so many souls with other colors to their energy. Subject: The vibrancy of white energy indicates we are able to meld our vibrations easily with all others, souls, for clear communication. Dr. N: I suppose this is why teacher guides often display bright white halos, but how does this white differ from the solid white light of a young soul? Subject: White represents the energy color base for all souls. It is the shading of white with other color mixtures which identify each soul. White is very receptive energy. The newer ones are receiving vibrations in great quantities, while teachers are sending information in large amounts to be absorbed as uncluttered truths. Dr. N: And the beginner soul has had so little experience, you don't visualize any other colors except white? Subject: That's correct. They are undeveloped. Although there is much I don't know about the entire matrix of soul energy color, I have learned that changes in color cores have become much less evident after level 4. Over many years of research, I have kept a record of what people have told me about these secondary halo colors. The major colors each have their own range of attributes. Over 90% of my subjects agree on the qualities these colors represent in a soul. I have condensed what I have learned into 3 of the most commonly reported character traits for each color without regard to shade variations. Black is either tainted, damaged, or defiled negative soul energy, which is generally seen in the soul restoration centers. White: purity, clarity, restlessness. Silver: ethereal, trust, flexibility. Red: passion, intensity, sensitivity. Orange: exuberant, impulsive, openness. Yellow: protective, strength, courage. Green: healing, nurturing, compassion. Brown: grounded, tolerant, industrious. Blue: knowledge, forgiveness, revelation. Purple: wisdom, truth, divinity. In the next chapter, there will be other spiritual references to the significance of colors. This pertains to the colored garments council members wear as perceived by the souls who come before them. In addition, I will show how the designs of certain emblems worn by these elders, some of which are gemstones, convey certain meanings through color.
You see how ridiculous this whole hierarchy system is? I mean, it is in-depth and essentially is in place just like anything we experience here or see here. It's, you have, for example, lower class, middle class, upper class, the super rich, it's just it's no different. It's just dividing you up and keeping you within the system. It's no different.
For example, in a particular level 2 soul group, displaying both core and halo colors, there are 12 members, including my primary subject, a level 2 male. Under hypnosis, this subject is looking at the 11 souls in his primary group who are members of his current family in this life, plus a best friend. His sister has a core color that is almost solid yellow because she is moving into level 3. If she also had a strong protective side to her of yellow, instead of the blue knowledge that she actually has, it would have been harder for my subject to report that fact based on color alone, because her halo and core color would have been nearly the same. Besides his sister, the subject's grandparents and son are slightly more advanced than other members, while his father and aunt are slightly less so. The grandfather and mother of this family are healers. Almost half the group have no secondary halo colors. It is not at all unusual for me to encounter groups with none. My subject's bright red halo over an energy core mass of white and reddish pink confirmed his fiery, intense nature. His son in this life has similar behavioral traits. His wife is more contemplative, with an open, trustful nature. His daughter is non-judgmental and very spiritual. When I asked this subject to give me his thoughts about the red in his energy, here is what he had to say. Because of my intense nature, I have a problem with anger in my lives. I often choose bodies which are high-strung emotionally because they match my character. I don't like passive bodies. My guide doesn't mind these choices because she says I will learn to control myself by relaxing the brain of these bodies. This sort of control is hard because of my own impulsive reactions and passion in difficult situations. It has taken many centuries of past lives, but I am getting better at self-discipline. In the past,
Getting better with self-discipline. You see how it's never ending. We have examples of all sorts of things where you can spend hundreds, if not thousands of lifetimes working on all sorts of crazy things just to get past one obstacle. And then guess what? There'll be another one waiting in the wings to be used against you. And then you'll work on that for who knows how many lifetimes. I mean, we're talking about extreme numbers with some of the cases that we've seen. But the point is you're not going to get out of it until you realize that you're in it and that you're being taken for a ride.
I have too easily entered into aggression, and now this is slowly changing. I also have the help of my soulmate, current wife.
Of course.
It sometimes happens that I will encounter souls who are anomalies in the way their development progresses. This becomes evident to me when clients describe souls in their groups with core colors that seem to be out of place. A prime example is the white lights of younger souls. The following case involves a group of level 3 to 4 souls. I had just finished reviewing all the yellow-blue members of this group when this subject disclosed there was a soul who was mostly white standing next to her. Case 32. Dr. N. What is a white light doing in your group of advanced souls? Subject: Lavani is in training with us because of her gifts. It was decided that although she is young, without much experience, she should not be held back. Dr. N: Isn't Lavani rather lost in your group? How can she keep up? Subject: She is being tested right now, and to be honest, Lavani is a little overwhelmed. Dr. N: Why was she assigned to your group? Subject: Our group is rather unusual because we have a high tolerance for working with inexperienced souls. Most groups of our type are so busy they would probably ignore her. I'm not saying they would be unkind, but after all, she is still a child and looks to us like a child, with her small, wispy energy patterns. Dr. N: I suppose most advanced groups would not want this responsibility? Subject: Quite right. Developing groups are very absorbed with their own work. To a child, they can appear almost disdainful. Dr. N: Then explain to me why Lavani's guide permitted her to come over here with your people. Subject: Lavani has great talent. We are a group of quick learners, and our lives have been immensely difficult and fast-paced. My subject has only spent 1,600 years on Earth. Despite our rapid advancement, we have a reputation for being very modest, some say overly so.
Huh.
We are studying to be teachers of children, and Lavani is good for us, too. Dr. N: I am very puzzled by this. Has Lavani been cut off from association with her own group at this early stage of her existence? Subject: Oh my, no! Where did you get that idea? She is with her own group most of the time. Laughs. And they do not know about her adventures with us. It is better that way. Dr. N: Why? Subject: Oh, they might tease her and ask too many questions. She is very attached to them, and we want Lavani to have a normal association with her own friends, even though we know she will be moving out of her group early because of her gifts. They are not yet motivated by the same desire. Dr. N: Well, if souls are telepathic and know everything about each other, I don't see how Lavani could hide all this from her friends. Subject: It is true the whites are not able to set up blocks as we do about certain private things. Lavani has been taught to do this. I told you she had potential. Pause, and then adds, Of course, everyone respects the private thoughts of others. It is not uncommon to find that when souls such as Case 32 do incarnate, the younger souls they are working with ask to be their children in life. Lavani is the child of this subject today. The reverse may also be true, where it is the child who is the advanced soul, living with a parent having the younger soul. There are instances when I hear about a soul whose color is described as being in retrograde. Most of us in our existence have slipped backward after some lives, but when our color regresses to any great extent, it is due to a condition that is both serious and prolonged.
Yeah, you're always going to slip back. That's really one of the driving points in all this. You're always going to slip back until you figure out what the hell is going on. Because it's the never-ending guilt trip of karma and judgment. It's just programmed into this bullshit.
Here is a statement from one client which carries a poignant message for all of us. It's a shame about Claris. His green used to be so brilliant. He was a great healer who became corrupted by power. For Claris, things were almost too easy. He was so talented. His downhill slide happened over a number of lives, involving many abuses. He loved the veneration and adulation so much, his vanity became a disguise from himself. Claris began losing his gifts, and we noticed his color fading and growing more muted. Finally, Claris became so ineffective, he was sent down for retraining.
Sent down for retraining. I mean, it's... There's really no end to this stuff. It just goes on and on and on. And, you know, he's basically demoted and sent back down. I mean, it's just, ugh.
We all expect he will eventually come back. Colors of visitors in groups. Once in a while, I hear that a color presentation from one or two souls in a group appears to be out of place with everybody else. I have learned this may signify temporary visits by a highly specialized guest, or a soul from a nearby group. Once in a while, I hear about a visitation by an interdimensional traveler whose experience far exceeds that of the group. I have a condensed quote from an interesting report about such visitors. When we look at advanced beings who come to visit our group through other dimensions that are not familiar to us, it is like they have passed through a screen, which we call the lens of light, to reach us. They come once in a while at the invitation of our guide, Joshua, because they are friends of his. We see these souls as having the silver of flowing water as they pass in front of us. To us, the silver stream is a cloak of passage, the purity of a translucent interdimensional intelligence. They are elastic beings with the ability to pass through many physical and mental spheres and function well. They come to help push away the darkness of our ignorance. But these beautiful beings never stay long.
They never stay long. These beings seem to me that they're not coming from outside the system and filled with all this purity and blah, blah, blah. They're projecting purity. They're projecting, should we say something like wisdom? All, powerful. They've reached the point of being perfect. I'm kind of going off track a little bit with that, but you see what I'm saying? They're not coming from outside the system. It's being perceived that way. And what it does is it probably gives this false hope that, oh, one day I can aspire to be like that, and yada, yada, yada. Why aren't they asking, why can't I be like that? Why can't I go out and experience things like that? No. Well, you've got to go through all these classes. You've got to go back down to earth. And, you're going to slip up once in a while and fall back down the ladder and yada, yada. But, tough shit. You're on your own. You're going to have to keep trying till you get it right. And then maybe one day we'll let you out. Except there is no getting out. There's no getting out until you figure all this out. Once you realize that this Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap is real and that you have the power within you through consent, it's always going to be like this.
I should add that these colorful characters who briefly appear in soul groups have a profound effect. In the previous case, when I asked my client to give a specific example of an insight gained from the teachings by these silvery beings, I was told, they widen our vision to see more probabilities in making choices by becoming astute at reading people. This skill develops critical thinking and allows for informed decisions based upon larger truths. Human versus soul color auras. There is another misconception about color I have encountered since Journey of Souls was published. Many people seek to find comparisons between my color classifications with souls and that of human auras. I believe these assumptions can lead to the wrong conclusions. Color and energy vibrations are closely linked in souls and are reflective of the non-material environment of the spirit world. Thus, in a physical environment, the frequency of the same soul energy is altered. The human body changes the color of these energy patterns further. When healers identify color auras around human beings, these colors are largely reflections of physical manifestations. Besides thoughts from a human brain, which are influenced by our emotional makeup, central nervous system, and chemical balances, all the vital organs of the body are involved in human auras. Even muscles and skin play a part in creating the physical energy around us. Certainly, there are correlations between the soul mind and our bodies, but physical and mental health are the prime determinants in human auras. I should state that I do not see human auras. All my information about them comes from specialists in this field, and from my subjects. I am told that as we go through life, our temporary body fluctuates rapidly, and this affects the external color arrangements of our energy. It may take many centuries for soul colors to change. Eastern philosophy holds, and I agree, that we have a spirit body which exists in conjunction with the physical, and that this etheric body has its own energy outline. True healing must take into account both the physical and subtle body. When we meditate or practice yoga, we work to unblock our emotional and spiritual energy through various parts of the body. On occasion, when I am talking to a subject in trance about the distribution of light energy from other souls in their group, I will be told about stronger energy patterns emanating from particular areas of what seems to be a human shape. Just as we may bring imprints from a former life into our current life, we can also take body imprints into the spirit world as silhouetted energy reminders of our physical incarnations. For a while, during my questioning in the next case, I wondered if this subject was letting her conscious memory about...
Okay, so what we're going to do is just take a quick break, and probably be about 6 minutes or so, and we'll be leading into case 33. So I'll meet you back here in about 6 minutes. The countdown clock will be up, and see you shortly. All right. Thank you for your patience. Went a little bit over. I apologize. Okay, so we are going into case 33. Dun dun dun. All right, there we go.
Of what seems to be a human shape. Just as we may bring imprints from a former life into our current life, we can also take body imprints into the spirit world as silhouetted energy reminders of our physical incarnations. For a while, during my questioning in the next case, I wondered if this subject was letting her conscious memory about chakras seep into her unconscious explanations. Chakras are supposed to be vortex power sources that emanate from within us outward at 7 major points on the human body. This subject felt that chakras were a spiritual expression of individuality through physical manifestations. Case 33. Dr. N. You have said that Roy is one of the members of your family in this life who is in your soul group. When you look at Roy's focal point of energy, what do you see? Subject. I see a concentration of pinkish yellow coming from the middle of his body form, the place where the solar plexus would be. Dr. N. What body form? Why is Roy presenting a physical body to your group? Subject. We show the features of the body we have occupied that pleased us in life. Dr. N. Well, what does an energy concentration from the stomach area mean to you? Subject. Roy's strongest point of personal power in his lives is his gut, regardless of his body. He has nerves of steel. Laughs. He has other appetites in this area, too. Dr. N. If Roy's metabolic energy rate shows that attribute, can you pinpoint a distribution of extra light energy coming from certain places of the body in other members of your group? Subject. Yes. Larry has his greatest development from his head. He has been a creative thinker in many lives. Dr. N. Anyone else? Subject. Yes, Natalie. Her power essence is developing faster from the heart area because of her compassion. Dr. N. How about yourself? Subject. Mine comes from the throat, because of my communication skills through speech in some lives and singing in my current life. Dr. N. Do these energy points have anything to do with the projection of human color auras? Subject. As far as color, not generally. As far as strengths in energy concentration, yes. Spiritual meditation using color. The healing properties of multicolored lights for energy rebalancing in a recovery area were quoted in the last chapter from a soul called Banyan. People who have read my work about the spirit world have asked if this sort of information about color can be used for physical healing. Spiritual meditation as a means of getting in touch with our inner self is of great benefit in healing the body. There are many good self-help books on the market which explain the various forms of meditation. Since color transmission is the expression of a soul's energy, and that of our guides, perhaps I ought to cite one example of meditation using color. The 6-step meditative exercise I have chosen comes from a mixture of my own suggested visualizations and those of a courageous 54-year-old woman I worked with whose weight dropped to 69 pounds during her fight with ovarian cancer. She is now in remission after chemotherapy, and the speed of her recovery baffled doctors. A number of my clients generate a sense of spiritual empowerment by the use of meditation with colors. Those who have severe physical health problems tell me the best results come from meditating once a day for 30 minutes or twice a day for 15 to 20 minutes. Please know I do not offer these steps of meditation as a cure for physical ailments. The power of each person's mind and their ability to concentrate is different, just as is the nature of their illness. Nevertheless, I do feel one's immune system can be boosted by connecting with our higher self. 1. Begin by calming your mind. Forgive people for all the real and imagined wrongs that have hurt you.
Yeah. We'll just forgive. I mean, we've brought up forgiveness. There's nothing wrong with forgiving. But there also comes a point, depending on what happened, is that forgiveness warranted? Did the person who inflicted pain on you, did they go out of their way to apologize and make the wrong they committed right? Did they take initiative? I was talking with Night Sky about this not that long ago. Yesterday, actually. It's understandable. But the point is when... I mean, I've seen... we've kind of gone over this before, but it needs mentioning again because it's really important. Is that there is a moment where... Oh, hold on. I'm being attacked there. Okay. All right. Okay. Hi, guys. All right. All right. I'll be with you later. Good girl. Anyways, there's a moment. This has happened with a number of deathbed visions and visitations I've run across, but one in particular stands out. I'm not going to just go into a ton of detail about it. I'm just going to give a very brief overview of it. An example of how forgiveness is manipulated inside of the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap we reside in, and outside of the control subrealms, astral subrealms. There's this man who, at a very young age, I think he was 18, very young, ends up going into the army. I think it was Vietnam or something like that. And he's supposed to be covering his mate in his platoon. Doesn't. Guy ends up dying, lives with it his whole life. Well, what happens? On his deathbed, he is confronted by this thing that has just ate him up his entire life. And the mate who died comes back and basically reassures him, it's okay. But before all that, what does the person have to do? This goes to what we were speaking of earlier as well. It's kind of a combination of things. You have similar to the life review, where this guy comes in, this entity comes in, and the guy on the deathbed goes through a whole experience where he relived the experience, but in the guy who got shot's point of view. Felt all the emotions, felt everything, experienced the pain of the family's reaction later, all sorts of creepy stuff. And then there is this forgiveness that's given. Okay, that's fine. It ate the poor guy up his whole life. He lived through hell with it. And then all of a sudden, everything's forgiven and blah, blah, blah. I've seen it also with, people who were abused as children. As soon as they turned 18, they left the house, didn't come back, didn't think twice, didn't contact them, nothing, none of it. And then 60 years go by, they're on their deathbed all of a sudden, and then the family member that abused them to the point where they would not even communicate with them after they became an adult for the rest of their lives, all of a sudden, everything's forgiven. Everything's forgiven. That's powerful. That's extremely powerful. These are big examples of just how in-depth this manipulation system is. It's huge. And so when I say forgiveness, there's levels of forgiveness. All right? There's small things that people do wrong. Of course you forgive them. You understand. Everyone screws up. But then there's other levels of forgiveness where it needs to be warranted and a give and take scenario. Okay? So that's kind of what I'm pointing at. And as far as the whole thing goes, it shouldn't even be, if you're going to forgive someone, you're doing it because you want to, you're driven to it, not because there's this karmic thing going through you or all that stuff. You should do it because you have morals, you have ethics. That's the way you choose to live your life. Fine. But when it comes to the moment of death, leading up to death, no. Don't fall for this crap. Okay?
Spend 5 minutes cleansing, where you visualize all negative thought energy, including fears about your illness, as a black color. Think of a vacuum cleaner moving from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, sucking up and pushing out of your body all the darkness from the pain and hurt of your disease. 2. Now, create a light blue halo above your head that represents your spirit guide, whom you call upon for help while sending out loving thoughts. Then spend another 5 minutes concentrating on your breathing while counting the breaths. Measure your breaths carefully while thinking comfort in and tightness out. You want to harmonize your breathing with the rhythm of the body. 3. At this point, start to think of your own higher consciousness as an expanding white gold balloon to help protect your body. Say in your mind, I want that part of me which is immortal to defend the mortal. Now begin your deepest concentration. You will pull the purity of white light from the balloon and send it as a power beam into your body organs. Since your white blood cells represent the strength of your immune system, visualize them as bubbles and move them around your body. Think of the white bubbles as attacking the black cancer cells and dissolving them with the power of light over darkness. 4. If you are receiving chemotherapy, support this treatment by sending out a lavender color as you would see from an infrared heat lamp to all parts of your body. This is the divine color of wisdom and spiritual power. 5. Now, send out the color green for healing these damaged cells from the effects of the cancer. You might blend this color with the blue of your spiritual guide intermittently during the most difficult periods. Pick your own shade and think of the green as a flowing liquid, mending your insides. 6. Your last step is to once again create the blue halo of light around your head to sustain mental strength and courage over a weakened body. Expand it around the external parts of your body as a shield. Feel the healing power of this light of love both inside and outside. Think of yourself in a state of suspension and close by repeating a mantra such as heal, heal, heal. Meditation as a daily discipline is hard work which pays big dividends.
It does.
There is no right way to meditate. Each person must find a program which links their intellectual and emotional systems in a framework that suits their needs. Deep meditation brings us into a divine consciousness and a temporary release of the soul from personality. With this liberation, one is able to transcend into a different, non-dimensional reality where everything in the focused mind is unified into a single whole. The woman with ovarian cancer was able to help her doctors by bringing total mental concentration to bear on healing her body. When the mind is in a pure centered state, we can find who we really are, that essence we may have lost somewhere along the road of life. Daily meditation is also beneficial as a means of connecting with the presence of loving spirits.
Just
Forms of energy color. Besides the...
All right, let's just be clear. Look, meditation's great. I do it every morning. But like anything else, you can run into some weird shit with meditation. And I think it's just really important that you put out an intention for it to be a peaceful, loving, enjoyable meditation session every time you do it. Kind of like we've talked about in the past, well, quite a while ago. Some of you may not be aware. I used to kind of do this interaction with the sky, and orbs would appear and all that stuff. And I put out my intention of a loving nature, this and that. And then I realized that the script that I was using wasn't really as in depth as it should have been. And once I changed that script, I have since then never had a negative experience in relation to that. Now, I do the same thing with meditation. It works. It works. If you put that intention out there that you're only desiring a positive, loving, peaceful, enjoyable meditation where you're trying to access as much of your true essence as possible, it pays off in big, big ways. So, but let's also not discount that if you're having a rough day, your intention isn't in the right place, and you can run into some weird negative type responses, negative emotions, tapping into previous things that may have bothered you in the past. It could be from yesterday, it could be from a few weeks, could be from your childhood, could be anything. The point is you got to go into these sessions making sure that your intention is very clear and there's no room for manipulation. And it really, really helps. But there just as many positives you can receive from meditation. If you're in a bad headspace, you can receive a lot of negative too. Just putting that out there. It really needs to be said.
Of life. Daily meditation is also beneficial as a means of connecting with the presence of loving spirits. Forms of energy color. Besides the effects of color, another external means of investigating souls in groups is to compare their shapes. These energy forms would include symmetry versus irregularity of shape, brightness or dimness of light configurations, and the qualities of motion, all of which provide spiritual signatures of the group members. When observing other souls, many people in a trance state are aware of a soul's vibrational resonance. After I review the nuances of color tone with a client, together we will study the pulsation and vibrational rates of motion of their soul companions. In discussing the energy form of any soul, my first question is, how much energy was left behind in the spirit world before the current incarnation? This question has much to do with the activity or passivity of the soul and relates to brightness and dimness of energy. Despite the amounts of energy, however, all manner of energy generation is identified by character, capacity, and mood of the soul. These are variables that can change after a series of lives. During my pre-hypnosis intake interview with a new client, I inquire about the cast of characters in their current life. I make notes about all their relatives, friends, and past loves as well. This is because I will have a front row seat in the play that is about to unfold from their minds, and I want a theater program. My client will be the leading actor in this drama, with others in supporting roles. In the case excerpt which follows, it can be seen how quickly information is gained through questions involving both color and form about a supporting cast member within a client's soul group. During my intake interview with Leslie, my client, I learned of her sister-in-law named Rowena, who was a real thorn in her side. Leslie, whose spiritual name is Susius, described herself as someone who seeks security in her lives and tends to be around peaceful people. In her current life, this subject remarked, "Rowena seems to enjoy confronting me and challenging all my convictions." What follows is the opening scene of Leslie's mental picture of her spirit group.
It just needs to be said, we've seen this time and time again, where it's like a play being acted out. just as life is a play being acted out down here, it's no different up there.
Case 34. Subject: very upset. Oh, I don't believe it. Rowena is here. Or rather, it's Shath. That's Rowena. Dr. N. What's wrong with seeing the soul of Rowena in your spirit group? Subject, frowning with a tightening of the mouth. Well, Shath is one of the disruptive ones. Dr. N. Disruptive in what way? Subject. Oh, compared to those of us who have smooth, unruffled energy vibrations. Dr. N. Susius, as you observe your sister-in-law, how is she different in terms of color and shape? Subject, still verifying the recognition of Rowena. There she is, all right. Her orange energy is pulsating rapidly, the usual sharp, jagged edges. That's Shath. Sparks, that's what we call her. Dr. N. Does the form she presents to you indicate she is as antagonistic to you here in this spiritual setting as in your current life? Subject. Leslie is now adjusting to Rowena's presence, and her voice softens. No. Actually, she draws us out. She is good for our group. I can see that. Dr. N. I want to consider how her projections are different from your own energy in color and form. What can you tell me about yourself in the spirit world? Subject. Mine is soft white with rose variations. I am called Bells by my friends because they see my energy as fluid droplets of steady rainwater which give off an echo of faint tinkling bells. Shath has a sharp clarity to her energy, and I see tints of gold. Her energy is bright and very overpowering. Dr. N. And what does all this mean to you and your group? Subject. We just can't be complacent around Sparks. She is so restless, a swirl of constant motion. There are always questions from her and challenges about our performance. She enjoys taking part in our lives, which shake our complacency.
I bet.
Dr. N. Motion.
Listen.
There are always questions from her and challenges about our performance. She enjoys taking part in our lives, which shake our complacency.
Which shakes our complacency. Boom. That's a slam dunk right there. Right in your face. It's there's so many giveaways in all of these past life regressions. Now, of course, there are some that you'll run across from various regression therapists who feel that they feel off, but for the most part, you start to see a pattern, and that's what I'm always trying to look for. I'm really good at pattern recognition and identifying where this information kind of crosses over with each topic, not just in past life regressions, but near-death experiences and a bunch of other things, which I'm not going to drone on too much about, but it's really important to be able to listen and identify these things, because what it does is it creates that picture and it proves this to you, because there is no more important truth than this. It's the king, the Mac Daddy of all truths. And it's the most rewarding thing you can spend your time on. And just a shout out to anyone new who's just getting here and not familiar with this. It's okay to initially look at this and say, okay, I'm doubting it. I don't necessarily believe it's happening. But I implore anyone out there to go look for themselves. Spend the time. Listen to what these people are saying. Don't just take the everything's love, light, rainbows, and unicorns, because that's not what's going on. It can be portrayed that way. It can be presented that way, particularly in near-death experiences. But there are certain things that pop up time and time and time again, and it all leads to this truth, the king of all truths. So just stick in there with me. And also, please, I ask each and every one of you to go out and do your own research and prove it to yourself. To date, I haven't had anyone come to me with anything and say, this isn't true, blah, 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 and this is why, and not really be able to show them examples or reasoning for a certain doubt that they may have, or they're just stuck in religious dogma or who knows what, stuck in the New Age line of thinking, and truly haven't looked into it. You can tell when someone hasn't looked into it, but the answers are there, my friends. And for everybody's sake involved, on an individual level, this is a truth you have to prove to yourself, because there will come a point like what happened with me. I was fighting this left, right, up and down, every which way, not wanting to admit that this was the truth, even though I kind of, the more I looked into it, the more I was like, shit, yeah, it's actually happening. And then there just comes a day when you've seen enough and you say, okay, shit, it's happening. All right, I don't, and then there's like a stages of grief process that goes on too. I don't want to go off track too much, but I think it's important for anyone new that comes in and is, or those who are still on the fence, take reassurance in your ability to research and listen and decode all this stuff, because everyone can do it. We all have access to the same information. It's just a matter of hunting it down and breaking it down and spending the proper amount of time that it deserves in order to prove it to yourself.
Dr. N, do you think she is less abrasive in the spirit world than in her current body as Rowena? Subject laughs. You bet. She chose a high-strung body with a short fuse which amplifies everything. This time, current life, she came as my husband's sister. Shath can be so annoying, but now that I see who she really is, I know her motives come from love and wanting the best we have to give. Laughs again. We help her to slow down too, because she has a tendency to jump into fires without looking. Dr. N, is there anyone in your inner circle of friends whose energy is similar to Shath, to Rowena? Subject grins. Yes, that would be my best friend Megan's husband, Roger. His name here is Sierra. Dr. N, how does his energy appear to you? Subject, he sends out geometric angular patterns that zigzag back and forth. They are sharp waves like his tongue, and from a distance his energy reverberates like crashing cymbals in an orchestra. Sierra is a daring, intrepid soul. Dr. N, based on what you have been telling me about energy shapes, could Shath and Sierra, Rowena and Roger, have a compatible matchup in life? Subject bursts out laughing. You must be joking. They would kill each other. No, Rowena's husband is Sen, my brother, Bill, a peaceful soul. Dr. N, please describe his energy. Subject, he has a grounded energy which is greenish-brown. You know Vines is around when you hear a gentle swishing. Dr. N, Vines? I don't understand what that means. Subject, in our group, when you get a nickname, it sticks. Sen has vibrational waves which look like a vine, with the patterns forming braided strands, as with long hair. Dr. N, does this energy pattern identify Sen, your brother Bill, in some way? Subject, sure. Complex but constant. Very dependable. It reflects his ability to weave a variety of elements together in lovely harmony. Vines and sparks blend beautifully, because Rowena never lets Bill get too complacent, and he gives her an anchor in life. Dr. N, before I go on, I have noticed that the spirit names you have given for your soul group all start with the letter S, Does that mean anything? I'm not sure I am even spelling them correctly. Subject: don't worry about that. It is the sound which gives off the intonations of their energy motion. That reflects who my friends really are. Dr. N: sound. So, besides the color and form of your group's energy, their waves have sound linked to each of them, as we might hear on Earth? Subject: well, sort of. With us, it's energy resonance we identify with Earth, although you could not hear these vibrations with a human ear. Dr. N: could we go back to your best friend, Megan? You mentioned her, but I don't know her vibrational pattern color. Subject, with a warm smile: her wispy, pale yellow energy is like flickering sunlight on a field of grain, smooth, even, and delicate. Dr. N: and her character as a soul? Subject: absolute, unconditional compassion and love. Before going further with the issue of sound and the similarity of some spiritual names, I should explain the karmic link between my client Leslie and her best friend in this life, Megan. To me, it is an emotionally compelling story. During my intake with Case 34, Leslie explained to me that she was a professional singer, and that occasionally her throat and larynx were especially tender. I regarded this as simply an occupational hazard, and thought no more about it until we reached the death scene in her past life. It was then necessary to deprogram a former body imprint directly related to Leslie's throat.
And what we're about to see here is something we've discussed before, where if you have deep-seated fears and phobias usually it's from a very young age, but they could manifest themselves in your adult life too, out of nowhere. They are normally rooted in some sort of past life trauma. And with regression, in quite a few cases, you can actually, surprisingly, heal those traumas, those phobias, those deep-seated fears that most of the time you have no reason for having. They're not necessarily something that is related to a trauma or fear that is explainable. Like, for instance, you almost drowned as a child, something like that, and then all of a sudden you're afraid of water, something along those lines. But if you had a fear of drowning from a young age and you just never liked going in water, then that's something that theoretically can be worked on and fixed through past life regression therapy. Now, I'm just going to say you got to be careful with a therapist that you use. I think you really have to be open with them up front before you even book a session. You talk about how you don't want it being like a scenario where the therapist is leading you or anything like that, but more or less guiding you and letting you organically have the experience, and they could kind of help push you in the direction of the possible lifetime that may be related to that trauma that you're carrying over into this lifetime. And if they're good at what they do, they can potentially help heal you. It's pretty impressive stuff, and it's normal. I've seen quite a few examples of it, so it's not just here and there, but I think it's something a lot of us can do. The only thing is being able to zone in on what lifetime it applied to. Most of the times it is linked to a fairly recent lifetime. More than likely, your most recent, last couple lifetimes, something like that. And then they just work from there and help you get rid of that. So once you come out of that session, you can move on, and surprisingly that fear or phobia washes away. Really, really fascinating stuff. But just be careful, as always, with who you are going to allow to work with you when it comes to hypnosis. Just like anything else, you got to use your discernment, look them up, and do your homework. Speak with them. A good past life regression therapist or any hypnotherapist will give you the opportunity to speak with them before even booking an appointment, and will address your needs or requirements prior to going in for the actual session.
In their past life, Megan was Leslie's younger sister. As a young girl, Megan had been forced by her father to marry a wealthy, brutal older man called Hogar, who beat and sexually abused her. After a short while, Leslie helped Megan escape from Hogar in order to run away with a young man who loved her, Roger. An enraged Hogar found Leslie that night and dragged her to a secluded place where he raped and beat her for hours to learn the whereabouts of her sister. Leslie told Hogar nothing until he began to strangle her for information. She then bought her sister more time to get away safely by giving Hogar the wrong directions. Hogar strangled Leslie to death and rushed away, but he never found Megan again. Later in our session, Leslie had this to say: "Singing in this life is an expression of love, because my voice was silenced over love in the last life." Sounds and spiritual names. We have seen how color, form, movement, and sound are individual markers of souls in their groups. These four elements appear to be interrelated, although light energy, vibrational shapes, and their wave movement, as well as the resonance of sound, are not uniform among soul group members. However, there are resemblances with these elements between certain souls, and sound can be the one most obvious to the spiritual regressionist. There is a language to sound in the spirit world that goes beyond the systemization of spoken language. I am told laughing, humming, chanting, and singing exist, as do the sounds of wind and rain, but they are indescribable. Some subjects pronounce the names of souls within their group as if they were balancing musical chords in order to harmonize them with each other. Case 34 is an example of how the pronunciation of spiritual names within an inner circle of friends has an affinity of sound with the letter S. In case 28, two spiritual teachers were called Bion and Relon. There seems to be rhythmic interplay between certain soul energies in a cluster group, manifested in this way. Some hypnosis subjects have difficulty in producing spiritual names. These subjects say the names of souls in their minds consist of a vibrational resonance which is impossible to translate. It gets more complicated. One client stated, "In my experience, our real soul names are something similar to emotions, but they are not the emotions of humans, so I can't reproduce our names by any sound." There is also vocal symbolism connected to names, which may have hidden meanings that a client is unable to decipher in human form. Nevertheless, for many clients who are struggling to remember a spiritual name, the use of phonics and a cadence of sound may serve them well. A subject might use vowel sounds to characterize members of their cluster group. I had a client who named 3 souls in his group as Ki, Lo, and Su. It is not at all uncommon for me to have cases, such as the last one, where group names emphasize one letter of the alphabet. For some reason, many spiritual guides have an A ending to their names. I do have subjects in trance who find it easier to spell spiritual names for me rather than try to pronounce them. Yet these same clients will state that the spelling doesn't mean as much to them as the sound. My probes of spiritual names can also elicit shortened versions of the actual name. One client said, In my spirit group, the nickname for our guide is Ned. Not satisfied with this, I persisted and eventually had this guide's full name down on paper. The result was Nidas Barian. I got the message. During the rest of this session, we stayed with Ned. Privacy is also a factor when I have a client who feels that giving me the name of the spirit guide would somehow compromise that relationship. I must respect their concerns and be patient. As the session progresses, this uneasiness might wear off. For instance, a client told me her guide was called Mary. Then she added, "Mary is letting me call her by that name in front of you." I accepted this and we continued on for a while, when abruptly the guide's name became Mazukia. There are moments in a regression when it is not appropriate to push too hard for information. Finally, I should report that our own soul names can change a little as we evolve. I had one highly advanced subject tell me her name as a young soul was Vina, which had now changed to Kavina. I asked why, and Kavina replied that she was now a disciple of a senior guide called Karafina. When I inquired as to the significance of the similar phrasing of these names in the spirit world, I was told it was none of my concern. There are clients who have no reticence in closing down questions in a hurry if they feel I have stepped over the line of privacy. Soul Study Groups. In my first book, I devoted whole chapters to examining beginner, intermediate, and advanced groups of souls and their guides. I also gave case examples of group energy training, where souls learn to create and shape physical matter, such as rocks, soil, plants, and lower life forms. It is not my intention to repeat myself on these topics, except when, by doing so, I can further the listener's knowledge of other aspects of life in soul collectives. In this section, I am going to examine the relationships between learners within soul study groups, as opposed to the structural aspects of schoolhouses and classrooms reviewed earlier in this chapter. Spiritual learning centers are not necessarily visualized by my clients as having a classroom or library atmosphere. Quite often, these centers are described as simply the space of our home. Even so, the pictures of spiritual learning environments can change rapidly in the minds of clients discussing their instruction periods. When my research into our life between lives was published, some people were critical of my analogies of human schoolhouses and classrooms as spiritual models for the instruction of souls. One Colorado couple wrote me to say, "We find your references to schools in the afterlife to be distasteful, and this is probably due to your own bias as a former educator." Others have told me that for them, schools were a long series of bad experiences with...
Okay, just to be clear, putting Michael Newton aside, and we can say he absolutely has some biases on many things as it pertains to the whole thing going on. But there is no doubt that there are soul classes going on, similar to what we experience down here. As above, so below. As below, so above. It is 100% happening. I apologize. But what's really interesting about these soul classes is we only have little bits and pieces of what the hell is going on in those things. We get very little information. That speaks volumes to me. It shows a compartmentalization and a blockade from those achieving and finding those, rediscovering those memories. Time and time again, we see very, very little information. Out of all this stuff, we get a lot of truths, we get a lot of information, a lot of leaks that can easily paint the picture for us about the mechanics of what's going on. Will we ever have the full picture? No. But what's interesting, again, are these soul classes. We are kept in the dark in many ways. And yeah, we get a little bit here and there, but very, very little. So go into this stuff asking yourself, why is that blocked off? What's going on in these soul classes that we can access all these other things with regression and the hypnotherapy, all this stuff. But when it comes to the soul classes, we are very limited. And other regression therapists, many of them, besides Michael Newton, will also speak of these classes. So they are absolutely happening. The problem is the lack of information that we're getting with them as to what the hell is going on.
Bureaucracy, authoritarianism, and personal humiliation at the hands of other students. They did not want to see anything resembling human classrooms on the other side. I know there are listeners who have had bitter memories of the time they spent in school. Sadly, schools on Earth, as with other institutions, contain shortcomings wrought by human beings. Teachers and students can be guilty of arrogance, petty tyranny, and indifference to the sensitivities of others. Wherever learning takes place, there is scrutiny. Nevertheless, many of us remember having caring teachers who gave us essential information, while we formed lifelong friendships with fellow students as well. The functional aspects of acquiring spiritual knowledge are translated by the human mind into learning centers, and I am sure our guides have a hand in creating visualizations of earthly edifices for souls who come to our planet. People in hypnosis talk about the similarities of form and structure to Earth in some respects, but there are great differences in other aspects of their reports. My clients tell me about the overwhelming kindness, benevolence, and infinite patience of everyone in ethereal study areas. Even the analysis of each soul's performance by fellow students is conducted with total love, respect, and a mutual commitment to make things better in the next incarnation. Soul groups appreciate individualism. It is expected that you will stand out and make contributions. There are forceful souls and quiet souls, but no one dominates, just as no one is obtrusive. Individualism is appreciated because each soul is unique, with strengths and weaknesses that complement others in the group. We are assigned to certain soul groups for our differences as well as similarities. These differences in character are honored because souls who share their lives bring a rich personal wisdom to every lifetime experience. Souls love to tease and use humor in their groups,
Yes,
but
they
always
do.
they show respect for one another, even with those who have been in bodies that have hurt them in life.
I just want to say there's a difference between the soul group that you will be involved with versus the soul classes. Okay, they're two separate things. You're involved with that group in the soul classes most of the time, but the group itself is a feeding frenzy and a confirmation machine to keep you in this echo chamber of how to put it? I guess confirmation. You know, it's allowing you to be manipulated and going along with the show because hey, look at the rest of the group. They're here. They're going through it. So obviously, I'm here to learn. Obviously, I'm here to figure out myself and grow and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, everyone involved is in the same system, falling for the same scam.
More than forgiveness, souls exercise tolerance. They know that most negative personality traits connected to the ego of the body of the person who brought them sadness and heartache were buried when that body died. At the top of the discarded list of negative emotions are anger and fear. Souls volunteer both to teach and learn certain lessons, and karmic plans may not always work out in the way they were intended, given the variables of earthly environments. I remember after one of my lectures, A psychiatrist raised his hand and said, "Your discussion about soul groups reminds me of tribalism." I responded that soul groups do appear to be tribal in their intense loyalty and mutual support for each other in a spiritual community. However, soul groups are not tribal in their relationships toward other groups. Earth societies have...
Well, he'll probably bring this up. He's brought it up before, where there really isn't this crossing over with one soul group to another soul group. It does happen, but it doesn't happen regularly. It's not on a mass scale, and it's usually individuals that will cross over in the effort to, quote unquote, teach or learn, off of one another. One soul that might be involved in one group will go over to the other group in an effort to teach them something, because they are more knowing on a specific topic or something like that. So he's right. There isn't this crossover. He mentions it, but I don't know if how deep he's going to go into it on this part. I forgot, but he's brought it up multiple times where basically once you're in the soul group, you kind of stick with the group outside of the masters, the council of elders, and various types of controllers, guru types that have laid down the law, basically, on how things are going to be.
Nasty habit of mistrusting one another at best, and demonstrating bitterness and cruelty at worst. Societies in the spirit world are inclined to be rigorous, moderate, or compliant in their interpersonal relationships, but I see no evidence of discrimination or alienation, either within or between soul groups. Unlike human beings, all spiritual beings are bonded together. At the same time, souls strictly observe the sanctity of other groups. When I was a part-time evening college teacher, I found that some of my students, including the adults in my classes, would confuse facts with their own value patterns. While struggling with conceptual problems, there were times when they argued from a false premise and even contradicted themselves. This, after all, is the nature of students. Eventually, they learned to extrapolate and synthesize ideas more effectively. From this background, my introduction to instruction in the spirit world gave me perspective. During the early years of my hypnosis research, I was astounded by the total lack of self-deception in spiritual classrooms. I saw that teacher guides seemed to be present everywhere, although not always in a manifested form. Our teachers come and go in spiritual study sessions, but never interfere with self-discovery. Although souls themselves are not yet omniscient, by having infinite knowledge of all things, they have no doubts about karmic lessons and the parts they played in past life events. An axiom of the spirit world is that souls are always hardest on themselves in terms of performance. Within soul study groups, there is a wondrous clarity of rational thought. Self-delusion does not exist, but I must say that the motivation to work hard in every life is not uniform among all souls. I have had clients tell me, "I'm going to skate for a while." This can mean slowing down their rate of incarnations, picking easy incarnations, or both. Although the soul's teachers and council may not be happy with this decision, it is respected. Even within the spirit world, some students choose not to give their best at all times. I believe they are a distinct minority of earthbound souls. To the Greeks, the word persona was synonymous with mask. This is an appropriate term for the way in which the soul utilizes a host body for any life. When we reincarnate into a new body, the soul's character is united with the temperament of its host to form one persona. The body is the outward manifestation of the soul, but it is not the total embodiment of our soul self. Souls who come to Earth think of themselves as becoming masked actors on a world stage. In Shakespeare's Macbeth, The king prepares for death by telling us, "Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more." In some ways, this famous line describes how souls feel about their lives on earth. The difference being that, once the play has begun, most of us don't know we are in a play until it's over, due to a variety of amnesiac blocks. Thus, the analogy of a play, like that...
Yes, the amnesiac blocks. That's the crux of the whole system. The ability for the veil of forgetfulness to be applied lifetime after lifetime. And it goes on, and it applies up there. Don't fool yourself in thinking that it's not going on up there. That's how it really is a combination of not just here, but up there. It's happening. There is only a certain available amount of information that can be retained. But that's because we've agreed to it. We've consented to it. This is where it all lies. The veil of forgetfulness and consent. And it's going on, and it's very easy to see. We have so much power within us with consent. It's really, really incredible once you see it and realize that power. We were given that power for a reason. We just have to exercise it and get out of the veil of forgetfulness. But we can't fully get out of it until our time has come to leave this place. But we can tap into little bits and pieces. The most important thing is how you conduct yourself leading up to and at the moment of death. That is the choke point where liberation and sovereignty comes about, or ending up back here, back into the cogs of the wheel of the system, and answering to other beings instead of yourself, and doing what you want to do from your heart. AA, thank you very much. I appreciate the $2 super chat. That's very kind of you.
Out of a schoolroom befits what my clients see in deep hypnotic trance states. I have had clients tell me that when they return to their soul groups after a particularly hard life, there is clapping and shouts of bravo from their friends. The applause is for a job well done at the end of the last act of the play of life. One subject said, "In my group, the major cast members of our last play in life will go off in a corner to study the individual scenes we played after it has ended, and before rehearsals begin for the next play to come. I often hear my subjects laugh about being offered a certain part in the next play, which is their current life, and the debates that took place before final casting decisions were made as to who would play what part in the future. Our guides become stage directors who go over past life scenes with us, frame by frame, of both good and bad times. Errors in judgment are presented in small bites. All possible outcomes are studied and compared by designing new scripts for these scenes with different sets of choices that could have been made in each circumstance. Behavioral patterns are minutely dissected with each player.
Okay, so again, we see the clear control that these so-called guides, the ascended masters, whatever the hell you want, teachers, whatever you want to call them, okay, have over you in your future destiny when you come back here. All these games going on where you're picking out your script. And what you do is you come down here and you fulfill that script. But prior to coming down here, when you're figuring out all the details with this so-called guide, this parasite, you are then led into believing that everything is going to just work out just fine. you're going to pick out, a good body, a good location, or you're going to be successful, this or that. And then all of a sudden you get down here and you don't come here with a guidebook. You don't come here with an idea as to where things should flow. Or you could it doesn't have to, it's not positive either. It could be negative where, you have these karmic lessons to learn, and you can end up being born in North Korea, in the slums of North Korea, and under a complete insane system. There are so many crazy, crazy ways that all this can pan out. And no matter what, it's never the way it was intended to be, or the way you expected it to be prior to getting down here. You're born under the veil of forgetfulness. You're born ignorant, with amnesia, with no recollection of who you are, where you came from, or why you were here.
By a review of all the roles in the script. Souls might then decide to switch roles with each other and replay key scenes all over again, to test the results with a different actor from their group, or by someone recruited from a nearby group. I encourage my subjects to tell me about these role substitutions. Souls gain perspective from being witnesses to their own past performance through other actors. Recreations of past life alternatives present a psychodrama I find useful as a therapeutic tool in a soul's current life. These stage analogies by soul groups do not trivialize what they go through on Earth as simple impersonations. They offer the soul an objective means of comprehension and foster a desire to improve. The system is ingenious. Souls never seem to get bored in these educational exercises, which invite creativity, originality, and a desire to triumph over adversity by acquiring wisdom from human relationships. Always, they want to do better next time.
Yeah, they always want to do better next time because they're guilt-tripped into it. You didn't do well enough. Well, you screwed up at this moment in your life. You screwed up in that moment in your life. You go to the life review, that's thrown in your face. You're never going to get it right until you take a stand and stick up for yourself and say, I will not consent. I will not be involved with any of this. Once the illusions start at death, the gloves are off. Back off. Everyone, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to live my existence the way I want to live. And I'm not going to allow some system of entities who feed off of my energy and my creative abilities, just like everybody else, in an effort to further their agenda. What you're doing is you are contributing to their agenda, not your agenda, their agenda. And what they're doing is achieving it through ways of manipulation, deception, and all sorts of screwed up systems that they have in place that work in unison down here and out in the astral.
Whatever the format, spaces of learning provide a fascinating chessboard for souls when they go over all the possible moves for the best solutions after the game is over. Indeed, some of my subjects call the whole process of reincarnation the game. The outcome of one's performance in the play may range from very satisfactory to acceptable to unsatisfactory. I realize some listeners might conclude this sounds suspiciously like educational grading on Earth, but
that's exactly what it's like. Exactly.
This is not an idea of my origination. I'm told that in soul groups, the evaluation of performance by our peers is not threatening. Rather, it encourages motivation. Most souls appear to me to be driven by a desire to review the last game of life they have played in order to better preview the next one. Like champion athletes, they want to try and improve with each performance. Ultimately, they know at a certain level of development and proficiency, this aspect of the game will end with the closing of the play and their physical incarnations.
Yeah, and then, what can happen to the athlete? What could happen to the child who works their whole life thinking that they're going to be a professional baseball player, makes it to the minor leagues and gets some catastrophic injury and everything falls off the rails and they're set back and they have to adjust and come up with a new plan on how they are going to move forward with their life, which would involve obviously taking a different job, something else that isn't what they had hoped for or scripted out. Well, what happens when you die? The same thing occurs. You can do something really screwed up or do something minorly screwed up that is, like we saw, for instance, earlier with the child, okay? And yet they're guilt tripped, and then all of a sudden you're sent back. You're knocked down a peg. You're not worthy of being in the same class that you likely were the previous incarnation or the previous planning that you made in another incarnation. It's really, really sick stuff. And again, it blows my mind how this stuff is just excused away and everything's love and light and it's a learning experience. It's just not the case. That's not what's going on here. And the evidence is overwhelming. It's not, if there was just a couple things here and there that we can go to and say, maybe it is a learning experience, this and that. But no, there's far too many examples to point towards the overwhelmingly obvious opposite direction. It's crazy.
This is the goal of souls who come to Earth. As I stated at the beginning of this section, instruction in learning centers is not limited to reviewing past lives. Besides all the other activities, energy manipulation is a major part of training. The acquiring of these skills takes many forms in classroom work. I have said before that humor is a hallmark of the spirit world.
Now remember, the energy manipulation is how it pertains to this system, not your natural, organic self, your true essence, the spirit within. That's been robbed from you. That's been taken from you. And you deserve your sovereignty. You deserve to use your own free will however you wish. But the system here is sick. And this thing is massive. It's massive. And just hang in there with me, brothers and sisters. The evidence is mounting. The channel, please check my Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap playlist. It's just littered with evidence. And you can all go on your own and learn this for yourself. All the information's out there. Again, I have access to nothing special. It's all out there for us to find. And keep an eye out for my research guide, which will be coming out over the coming months, a little bit at a time.
The student in the next case gives us a sense of the whimsical when she explains how one of her creation classes got a little out of hand. Case 35. Dr. N. You have explained about how your group has gathered into an enclosure resembling a school classroom, but I'm not sure what is going on here. Subject. We have gathered for practice and creation training with our energy. My guide, Trinity, is standing at a chalkboard working on a drawing for us to study. Dr. N. And what are you doing now? Subject. Sitting at my desk with the others, watching Trinity.
Ugh.
Dr. N. Give me a picture of this. Are you lined up in a row with the others at a long desk, or what? Subject. No, we have our individual desks. They have tops which open up. Dr. N. Where are you sitting in relation to your friends? Subject. I am off to the left. Kael, the mischievous one, my subject's brother in her current life, is next to me. Jack, subject's current husband, is just in back of me. Dr. N. What is the mood in this room right now? Subject. Laid back, very relaxed. Because this assignment is so easy it's almost boring, watching Trinity drawing. Dr. N. Oh, really? What is Trinity drawing? Subject. He is drawing, how to make a mouse quickly, from different energy parts. Dr. N. Are you going to break up into groups to combine your energy with others for this assignment? Subject, with a wave of her hand. Oh no, we are way past that. We will be tested individually. Dr. N. Please explain the test. Subject. We are to rapidly visualize a mouse in our minds. As to the necessary energy parts to create a whole mouse, there is an order of progression with how energy should be arranged in any creation. Dr. N. So the test is the proper steps in creating a mouse? Subject. Yes. But actually this is a test of speed. The secret of efficiency in creation training is rapid conceptualization, knowing which part of the animal to start with first. Then you tackle the amount of energy to be applied. Dr. N. This sounds difficult. Subject, with a big grin. It's easy. Trinity should have picked a more complex creature. Dr. N. Doggedly. Well, it seems to me that Trinity knows what he is doing. I don't see... Cuts me off with gales of laughter, and I ask what is going on. Subject. Kyle has just winked at me and opened his desktop, and I see a white mouse scurrying out. Dr. N. Meaning he is getting ahead of the assignment? Subject. Yes, and showing off. Dr. N. Is Trinity aware of all this? Subject, still laughing. Of course, he misses nothing. He just stops and says, all right, let's all do this quickly if you are so ready to begin. Dr. N. Then what happens? Subject. There are mice running all over the room. Giggles. I put larger than normal ears on mine, just for fun, to liven things up even more. I will close this section with a more serious case example of group energy usage. It represents a type of lesson I have not reported on before. Case 36 involves an inner circle of 3 companions who wish to help a 4th member who has just incarnated on Earth. Unlike the higher level of soul capability in the previous case, these souls are part of a learning group that has recently entered Level 2. Case 36. Dr. N. As your mind visualizes all the meaningful activities going on in your study group, please take me to a significant exercise and explain what you are doing. Subject, long pause. Oh, you want that? Well, my 2 friends and I are doing our best to help Clédé with positive energy after he entered the body of a baby. We want this to work because soon we are all going to follow him into life. Dr. N. Let's go slowly here. What exactly are the 3 of you doing at this moment? Subject takes a deep breath. We are sitting together in a circle. Our teacher is in back of us directing things. We are sending a united beam of energy down into the mind of Clédé's child. He has just arrived and, well, I don't want to violate confidences, but he is not having an easy time. Dr. N. I see. Well, perhaps talking about it might clarify things. Don't you think it would be all right to discuss what you are doing a little further? Subject. I guess so. I don't see the harm. Dr. N. Gently. Tell me what month after conception did Clédé join the baby? Subject. In the 4th month. Pauses and then adds, but we started to help Clédé in his 6th month. It is such hard work to continue to the 9th month. Dr. N. I can understand that. The necessary concentration and all. Pause. Tell me why Clédé needs help from the 3 of you. Subject. We are trying to send him encouraging energy shaped in such a way to assist Clédé in making a better adjustment to the temperament of this child. When you join with a baby, it should be like placing your hand into a glove which is the exact size for you and the child. Clédé's glove is not fitting well this time. Dr. N. Does this knowledge come as a surprise to you and your teacher? Subject. Not really. You see, Clédé is a quiet soul, peaceful, And this baby has a restless, aggressive mind, and the mesh is difficult for Clédé, even though he knew what to expect. Dr. N, are you saying he wanted a certain kind of challenge before this baby was chosen? Subject, yes. He knew he needed to learn to cope with this sort of body, because he has had trouble before with not being able to control aggression. Dr. N, is this child going to be a hostile person? Perhaps one with few inhibitions, emotional conflicts, and so forth? Subject laughs. You got it. That's my older brother. Dr. N, in your current life, you mean? Subject, yes. Dr. N, what roles will the other two souls you are working with at the moment assume in Clédé's life, besides yourself? Subject, Zanine is his wife and Mance his best friend. Dr. N, sounds like a good support team. Can you explain a bit more why Clédé needs this sort of type A personality in a body?
Sounds like a good manipulation team.
Subject, well, Clédé is very thoughtful. He ponders a lot and is tentative. He doesn't jump into situations. It was felt this body would help him expand his capabilities and assist the child, too. Dr. N, was Clédé's last life a problem? Subject shrugs. Problems. The same sort of body. He was caught up in obsessions and addictions. Little control. He abused Zanine, too. Dr. N, then why? Subject breaking in. We really studied that last life, reviewing everything over and over. Clédé wanted another chance in the same kind of body. He asked Zanine if she would be his wife again, and she agreed. Subject begins laughing. Dr. N, what amuses you? Subject, only this time I'm going along as his younger brother to help keep him in line with a very strong body.
Yeah, keep him in line with a very strong body. Make sure he doesn't get out of control. But guess what? Where's the guidebook? Where's the guidebook? All this planning, all this crap going on up there, but where the heck is... Where is the retention of the way things are supposed to go? The learning aspect of things. If you're supposed to learn here, you think you'd have an idea as to what the hell the script was when you got down here. Some form of reference. We come here under the veil of forgetfulness again, lifetime after lifetime, and it just repeats the process. There's this... We're told one thing, and then it plays out in another way.
Dr. N, let's finish with your current energy beam exercise. Explain how you and your two companions use your energy in helping Clédé. Subject, long pause. The alignments of Clédé's energy and that of the baby are scattered. Dr. N, the baby has scattered emotional energy, and Clédé is having trouble melding with that? Subject, yes. Dr. N, does this involve the patterns of electrical impulses from the brain, or what? Subject, pause. Yes, the thought processes. From nerve endings, stops and then continues. We are trying to help Clédé in tracking this. Dr. N, is the baby resisting Clédé as an intruder? Subject, no, I don't think so. Laughs. But Clédé thinks he got another primitive brain in some respects. Dr. N, where in the baby's body is your combined energy beam going? Subject, we are being directed to work up from the base of the skull, starting at the back of the neck. Dr. N, I bring client into the past tense. Were you successful in this exercise? Subject, I think we did help Clédé, especially in the beginning. Laughs again. But my brother is still a headstrong person in this life. Additional illustrations of soul group interaction will be cited in later chapters. In Chapter 9, under the section describing the body-soul partnership, I will go into more detail about the physiological aspects of our struggle with the primitive side of the human mind mentioned in the last case. The next chapter is devoted to the higher spiritual assistance we receive as an adjunct to soul study groups. The psychological ramifications of future life choices actually start with our first orientation upon returning to the spirit world. Ideas involving past performance and future expectations are brought into sharper focus with the soul's first council meeting.
Okay. All right.
This is the end.
So that's going to wrap up Chapter 6 and the rest of the stream for today. We will pick up on... Oh, I'm sorry. We just wrapped up Chapter 5. And we'll be moving into Chapter 6 in Part 5, which should be in the next few days. For anyone new here, or also anyone having issues with getting notifications of the live streams, I've gotten some comments about it. So my only suggestion I can make would be to make sure that you have your when you subscribe to the channel, you hit all notifications, not just some of them, because otherwise I really don't know what the issue could be. So that's probably your best bet. I also do have 2 backup channels here on YouTube, which you can subscribe to. Those are located in the description. I would also suggest hitting the bell for all notifications on those. Those are only planning to be used if necessary, so don't worry about your notification feed getting clogged up. I also have Odyssey, which you saw at the beginning of the stream and what's pinned, so you can subscribe over there, and I do exclusive live streams on that platform. And by using the invite link, if you're new, it helps give you some free library crypto. The whole thing is free, and it also helps promote my channel over there at no cost to you. There also is a Twitter account, and I have big plans in the work for a website that is going to have a large section of community linked to it. So keep an eye out for that. Not sure when that's going to come out, but hopefully in the next few months. If you'd like to be added to the mailing list for when the website goes live, you can email me and I'll just take down your email. foreverconsciousresearch@gmail.com. That's foreverconsciousresearch@gmail.com. No channel in that. And just put in the topic website mailing list or something like that. And yeah, I think that's going to about wrap things up. Thank you so much for deciding to spend part of your afternoon with me. It's much appreciated, or afternoon, or evening, or morning, whatever time it may be. And thank you for anyone also watching the replay here as well. So much love, blessings, and we'll see each other again real soon.